do I do? All right, I'm calling the meeting to order. All right, so this is the State Board of Education monthly meeting. It's April 19th, 2023, and we are at the Central Vermont Career Center in person, which is wonderful, and thank you so much to CVCC for hosting us. We started with a terrific tour of the facility, and I think it's fair to say that there's a lot going on here, and it's just really incredible to see what the students are doing. So with that, I'm going to call the meeting to order, and Maureen, if you wouldn't mind doing the roll call.
Richard Werner. Gabrielle Lucci.
Here.
Jenna O'Farrell.
Here.
Tammy Colby.
Here.
Mohammed Juff.
Here.
Kimberly Gleason.
Here.
Heather Boucher.
She is here.
We saw her.
Be here soon. And Chair Sims.
Here. Thank you. Okay, so before we get rolling, are there any amendments to the agenda? Okay. Hearing none, we have the first thing that we're going to do is a student leadership team from Central Vermont Career Center. So it looks like we've got some students who are going to be joining us. I'm just going to plop this on the board.
Would you all like to introduce yourselves? We are missing a couple who are out on field trips.
Attention all U32 students, just a reminder that you are dismissed at 12:10. The bus pulls away at 12:15. Have a good afternoon.
That was for us. Our U32 students have early dismissal at U32, so they leave a little early. So I'll start. Why don't you introduce yourself, Bo?
I'm Bo. I go to youth.
Come on up to the table.
Where you want?
Right at the table.
Do you want to grab a couple extra chairs maybe? Just so you can all gather around.
I'm Bo. I go to U32. I'm in an electrical program.
I'm Amara Sievertson. I go to Spalding, and I am a cosmetology 2 student.
I'm Willow. I also go to U32, and I'm in cosmetology 1 this year.
Well, thank you guys for coming.
You're so welcome.
I'm hoping that this pops up.
Turn around so we can see.
Oh, here we go.
Do you have to if we turn this?
Yes, go ahead. Missing a few students who are going to be joining that are off on field trips. 3, 2, 1. Don't we love technology? There we go. So we already did the name. Why don't you talk a little bit about what we do as student leadership?
So as CVCC Student Leadership, we focus heavily on student voice within the CTE. So we're a group of individuals, preferably 1 to 2 students from each program who represent not only your program and come together and talk about what goes on individually in your program, but we work together as a whole to help better our CTE in any way we can. So over the past 2 years I've been in student leadership, we've done surveys, we've done field days, we've done program switch days where we go to different programs for a day and we get to experience and get to see what different programs do every day. So we're just very interactive within our community and as well as our community, our CTE, and we really try focusing heavily on not only just our student voice, but everybody's student voice. So we like to get a lot of feedback from a lot of our peers and our students and our staff, and like to take that and turn it into something better for our environment.
No, she pretty much
She
covers
said it all.
most of it.
So we just Amir had some questions that we just are going to plop up, and then we thought that the three of them would answer the questions based on their own experience.
I can go first. The reason why I attend the CVCC is because I like doing hands-on work instead of at a desk, because I would used to fall asleep at my desk, and and then someone recommended saying, oh, CVCC, it's really hands-on, a lot less paperwork, still paperwork, because life is paperwork, but much less compared to what I would do in normal school. So that's why I like it here, and I attended here. Yeah.
I chose to come to CVC because I knew I wanted to do cosmetology, especially from a really young age. So it was more of the career readiness that I really wanted to go and get right into right away. And when I toured and got to see it, I just fell in love with it. So I realized that this is what I wanted to do, what I wanted to be.
Yeah, kind of the same as Amara. I just, like, when I was a little kid, I would, like, be so drawn to, like, playing with hair and, like, doing all this stuff. And in 8th grade, U32 had an assembly that was, like, presenting all of the programs, and I was just like, yep, that's what I would like to do. And then, yeah, I just waited, and then I applied, and it was, like, just a blessing, honestly. It was really nice.
My future plans after coming here is that, as you heard, I'm in electrical, so I go through this program. Next year I'll be in co-op, and hopefully throughout the years I can get more of my license, and I can become a journeyman and hopefully make a lot of money. That's my future plans, to become journeyman, then a master's, and see where I want to go from there.
Yeah. My future plans after here is I will be a cosmetology instructor down in Georgia. I'll be teaching cosmetology and helping people prep for their state board exams and majoring in business administration.
My plan is to eventually open my own salon, but later on in life I really want to do hair and makeup for movie sets. Yeah.
Like, the next question is, like, very similar to the second one, so it's like, yeah, I don't know.
How has CVCC benefited your career, future career? Yeah.
Yeah, it pushed me to where I want to be. They gave me options of where I want to go to. So, because out in the field, they don't, you only find one thing, but here they have, like, multiple things where you set at one thing and then you go different paths compared where you want to go. Where in school you can have that opportunity to go places. Unlike out in the real world, you're like one straight line. It's like, ooh, not so great. So yeah, so prepare me for the future for that.
Yeah, I know in my program specifically, we get to book our clients on our own and do it ourselves, which is something you could do when you're a real cosmetologist. Is you make your own schedule and you do everything by your works and your schedule. So that's a great thing that I learned and what CVC set up for me. It also, they offer a lot of opportunities, like different ways to get different certifications within your programs. They really help you and they really push you to try different things, and they come out with new things every year to get certified in to help you with your career, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, my teacher is really big on, like, business, because she had her own business, so she really wants to set all of us up for that success. So we have a really big business unit. We're switching into that right now, and it's, like, really, like, financially heavy. Like, we hold money and, like, we do, like, all these equations. And for me, my path, wanting to open up my own salon someday, that's extremely helpful. So, yeah.
How COVID has affected me at CVCC is not that big. Maybe a little. Like, interacting at the beginning of last year, we couldn't do a lot of things what the previous years have done, because COVID restricted us for some of the stuff that they wanted us to do. I'm not sure what it was completely because I've never experienced it. Last year was my first time coming here, so I don't know what they experienced before I came.
COVID didn't really affect my learning when it came to being in CVCC. I know the years before, our salon was just starting to open back up to the public, so it was hard getting clients in a lot of the time, especially with COVID still being big around Vermont. Nothing really major for me in my experience, but I know in like beforehand our salon was completely shut down and we couldn't have anybody come in there. We went remote fully, so there was no hands-on learning. It was all on the computer. So.
Yeah, this is my first year here, so not much COVID has like affected my life here so far, but yeah, and hopefully it doesn't. But yeah, it did at U32, of course, but yeah, I've been fortunate to have not had interrupted it here.
What I like about CVCC is that it's really hands-on. We probably said that a lot of times here. Yeah, it's really hands-on compared to your traditional school work. What else do I like about it? I don't know. I can't think of the entire list. What I would change about CVCC is I wish we had a little bit more like field trips. We have a few here and there, but it's like because it's really hard like out in what I do for electrical because you have to plan it with the like other construction people and plan a field trip, make sure it's okay with their insurance, blah, blah, so no one gets hurt. So it's like a lot of things have to go through. And it's like, I wish we had more, but it's what it is.
I love all of the opportunities that they give you here. You get to do so many things. You get to experience and compete in Skills USA. You get to be a part of student leadership. You get plenty of scholarship opportunities, and you get to collaborate with other programs. It's very interactive, and that's what I really like about it. I don't necessarily think anything on my end I would want to change about it. I really like it here. So, yeah.
I don't think I would want to change anything about it either. I'm really, really happy in my program. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, do you guys have any questions for us?
It's okay.
Yeah.
Mary, you're going to Georgia.
Yes.
So are the licensures reciprocal, or do you have to do something else down there?
It depends on the state. So, if I'm licensed in Vermont, I can do a license transfer, and your license will hold. So Vermont's required hours are 1,000 versus Georgia's, which is 1,500. So your license will hold the amount of hours you've earned in your practice during cosmetology school. So it's not just 1,000, you get whatever. So I have over 1,000, so I'll have over 1,000 on my license. And they'll say, okay, well, they could say one of two things. They'll say, okay, well, you have to go back to school for X amount of hours complete, or we can transfer your license over. So my hope is that my license could transfer over right away, so then I can instruct and do the instructor's courses. But worst case, I have to go for a couple more hours, and it's half of a school year, so it's not too bad.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Amira, are you moving right into instruction?
Yes.
Wow, that's terrific.
Yeah. Yes, I'm moving right into it. My goal is to be a certified teacher by the time I'm 19 years old.
That's amazing.
So, and Bo, with the electrician, you kind of get to sort of see the range of job opportunities while you're in school, so that then you can know when you graduate, like, this is really where I'd like to focus my energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because here, what my teacher does is like, we mostly do residential and commercial stuff, but he also dips his toes into like, we do a little bit of circuitry, so like a little bit like building LEDs, whatever, so that we can like, if we want to do that, we can do it bigger to like build computers, your phones, blah blah. So he dips his toes into like other stuff so that we have more of an opportunity to learn this stuff and see, oh, there's that in the world out there as well, so we could do that. So yeah, but we do mostly do residential and commercial stuff.
And Willow, are you first year or second year?
I'm first year.
Okay. Yeah.
Can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
So, unfortunately for you two women, we're not going to help you a lot. There's not much you can do with it. But I will say, you know, we own a service station, we own a management company, we do a lot of maintenance and stuff, and I was really impressed, like with the garage. It's just looked like our garage, you know, with the lifts and the tire changers and balancers. And one of the things is we manage, I forget, 1,000, 1,200 properties, and we're always looking for electricians, plumbers, you know, HVAC people, gas people, and all we hear from all our contractors in our area, and we're not a city, you know, we're out in the country, but nobody can find help, and it's very hard to get like that handyman person too, and it is I think it's going to be a huge employment market in the future. Like I said, I can't help you guys with hair, but if you can figure a way to grow hair, I'll be your first customer. But the other trades I think are really, really important. And I know everybody, all the owners of businesses I know from Manchester down into Brattleboro are all looking for help and can't find people. So it's neat that you got a real leg up on that. And I was impressed with everything we saw. Everything was really done nicely and looked like fun. I wanted to go play for a while.
Yeah.
There's a huge playground here.
Yeah.
The heads, I got to tell you, though, the heads, I think I mentioned to somebody the heads and the cosmetology stuff, it reminded me of some of those horror movies, you know.
They do scare us sometimes, too.
Yeah.
You definitely seem happy here.
Yeah.
Like you're enjoying what you're doing.
Yeah. We do.
I have a question. So you spend part of your day here and you spend part of your day in your high school or like U32 as well, right?
Yes
It
and no.
depends.
It depends.
Yeah.
It depends.
For me, I'm taking my U.S. history class this year, so I go there like 3 days a week. But I took typically, you have to take financial literacy and U.S. history your like 11th year of high school.
Right.
So like, I know some people, don't you go back to financial lit also?
I did that last year.
Yeah, I took it over the summer, so I didn't have to come back every day.
Got it.
But next year, this will be the only school
This will
I
be the
attend.
place.
Yep.
Yeah, same
Yeah.
here.
So all my high school credits will be
Here.
basically from here.
What do your friends think about you being away to part of the day and coming back and forth? Has that created new friendships for you?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Are you still do you still feel connected to U32?
No.
Not at all.
Yeah, not at
I
all.
mean, I'm from
Spalding,
Spalding,
yeah.
and I'm right next to all of them, and I don't really, I have some friends that still
Yeah.
go there, and we still hang out
Yeah.
all the time.
So
but-
this is really your community now.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like at U32, when they like plan big events, they forget about us. So when we come back on the bus in like 1:15 or so, we are so clueless as to what's going on because there's stuff going on.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? And then and then there's this administration scrambling around to figure out what to do with us because they didn't plan for us to be back.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that frustrating to you?
That depends on what is going on. So
It's involves ice cream.
Maybe the temperature is.
I think I consider like, when people ask what school I go to, I don't say U32.
Yeah.
I say I go to CVCC.
CVCC.
Yeah.
Got
It
it.
feels like
Got it.
Yeah,
So this
because-
is really your school.
this is my school.
yeah, because I'm here 4 hours and I'm there for an hour and a half. So
Right. Right.
there's a big
Right.
difference.
I mean, if I want to get into it, I'll be like, well, I technically go to U32, but
I see.
I don't like to say that.
Gotcha.
Where do you get your diploma from, here or U32?
Oh, you get two.
You get two. I'll graduate high school next year, but I also graduate from Cosmetology 1 and then Cosmetology 2.
Yeah.
You get one diploma from their sending school.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
like a big ceremony every year.
So we have like our graduation here, and then our sending school graduation.
Yep. In our senior year.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what advising for next steps once you're done and get your diploma has been like? Like, do you feel like you have good options already, kind of back to what my colleague on the board said about, figuring out how to get a job if that's what you want, or figuring out how to go for more training? Like, has that been easy for you to make those choices because you're getting a lot of advice and counseling on that?
Yeah, it's really easy. They help you every step of the way to figure out what you want to do for the.
And Mr. Tozy, who's our co-op teacher, he has tons of resources of what places are hiring, what places need help, and that's all what co-op is that you're getting a leg up into the field. So he has a ton of resources of what places need to be hired and stuff. And even in our own programs, we have lists of places that need places to, for us to go and work at once we've graduated. I know in cosmetology we have that, and I'm pretty sure automotive does too, where they have a list of places that you can go to and interview at once you've graduated. We also do, I know my program, we do shadowing opportunities where you can go and shadow different salons it's like a co-op day kind of. You go and you go shadow for a day, and you get to really experience, and you can do multiple salons, you can do just one, just you get to fully experience what it's like in the outside world, as they say. So we definitely have a leg up than a lot of other people freshly starting in the businesses that we're in. So.
Are the opportunities statewide, nationwide, mostly local?
Yeah, so local mostly, all throughout Vermont, New Hampshire area. For me, when I found out when I wanted to go to Georgia, I did that on my own. I researched and I looked where do I want to go. I know in my class, a girl is moving to Colorado, so my teacher was calling schools out in Colorado for her and helping her find places and how to license over and stuff like that. My teacher actually has us call. If you want to go to Montana, you got to call them, and you have to figure out what your next steps are and stuff. So my teacher really pushes us to try to figure out what our next steps are for when we do graduate. If we want to go out of state or if we want to stay in state, because with our licenses we can go anywhere, really. So.
I'm really impressed with the amount of student voice and input and leadership that you have over your programs that you're in. And I wonder, from this experience, what recommendations that you have for your sending schools. Do you have practices here that are engaging, that are transferable or could be transferable to other settings?
I feel like we're very active with our school, unlike other sending schools. We're very active with them. We send out surveys all the time. We like to get their input on everything. So I know my sending school does not do that. We're very closed-minded, not closed-minded, but close the door kind of. So we're very engaging. We like to make sure everybody has their input on their learning, because it's their learning. So I just say we're very communicative. We like to communicate.
Would you be willing to have some presentations in different schools in Vermont to attract some more students in your field or in the great learning that is ongoing here?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. So, if you don't, I'm sorry. I know, I was telling somebody I wanted to go to the Career Center, but unfortunately my parents wouldn't let me because I had to go to college and I had to take a class that was at the same time the Career Center was. But we had a lot of different programs. Do the programs change by what people want? Because I know in Brattleboro we had a forestry program, we had a firefighter program. So how do you determine, and I don't know if that's more.
I can answer it.
I know a little bit, but I don't know much.
We have, our faculty had 3 different teams. One of those teams is Career Pathways. So they reach out into the community. They ask students, families, and community members about different programs. So actually next year, we've been approved by our school board to have a welding program, which is
Hey, I'm surprised for that because a lot of people want to get into
We're
that.
just waiting on state approvals. That was the same as design and fabrication. So it's yearly we're looking at numbers of programs. We're looking at opportunities in the field. If it's a high demanding job, we're looking at those things. So it's a lot of input from our current students, our families, and a lot of input from the community about what is needed in this particular Central Vermont community.
So do the career centers talk to each other and say,
Oh,
we
yeah.
have this program, and if you have a student that really wants that, we
Yep,
can?
so, for our students in our region, if we don't have a program that, like, let's say a student at U32 is interested in forestry, I know I was a sending school counselor for a few years, so we all work together. If they're interested in something that's not at their district's career center, looking at other career centers that have programs of interest. So yeah, if someone was interested in something that's not offered here, we would direct them to Randolph Tech or Green Mountain Tech or wherever there might be those programs.
Then my last question is, that you said there's like 60 students applied for 16 positions. Is there a lot of, do you turn a lot of people away?
Unfortunately.
Yeah, so, I mean, that makes it kind of difficult too, doesn't it, for?
It's very difficult, the admissions process. I don't know about other centers. Ours is very competitive. We've had almost 400 applications this year for 200 spots, and some of those applications for our exploratory, automotive, and building trades and cosmetology, those are our most competitive programs, all getting anywhere between 45 and 70 applications for 16 spaces. Some of which are not necessarily qualified applications, but absolutely automotive, we could fill 2 programs, we could fill 2 building trades, but we are not able to do that. Don't have the space.
But I mean, those are really needed functions in this state.
Yep.
So is it really a space limitation that's?
Yeah, I think the CVCC's goal is to move to our own location, so we have more opportunity for expansion. That is a few years away. But yes, that is the ultimate goal, is that in order for us to continue expanding, we need more space.
I have a question.
Although, we're a little behind schedule.
Yeah. Yes.
When I think of transportation issues or concerns, sending
So-
people away or far away for not having the domain they're interested in here.
Yep, our sending schools, with the exception of Spalding, because they're right here, all of our sending schools send buses and they transport their students to us. So there's a sending school bus, U32 students get on, they take the bus to U32, then they can hop on a bus and come to us, and then we transport back, they get transported back to their sending school.
That's great. Thank you.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks for your time.
All right, so we are a little off schedule, but I think we can make us some time up here. The next item on our agenda before we break for lunch is the Military Interstate Children's Compact Commission. So just to give some background on this, the Interstate Compact on Educational Opportunity for Military Children was developed jointly by the Council of State Governments National Center for Interstate Compacts and the U.S. Department of Defense, with input from policy experts, national associations, teachers, student administrators, military families, and federal, state, and local officials. The compact eases interstate education transition challenges encountered by the children of active duty service members, such as enrollment, eligibility, placement, and graduation. The compact has been adopted by all 50 states and the District of Columbia. And pursuant to 16 VSA Section 164.20, the authority to appoint a compact commissioner and military family education liaison has been delegated by the governor to the State Board of Education. Many of you who were here might recall that we reappointed David Young this past fall, but he has recently accepted a position as the superintendent of Catholic schools within the Roman Catholic Diocese in Burlington. So that limits his effectiveness to assist military families transitioning in and out of Vermont's public schools. With that, I was notified when Mr. Young stepped down. I reached out to the secretary to ask for some assistance finding replacement, and you do have Secretary Bushi's recommendation in the agenda packet. So with that, I will make a motion that the State Board of Education appoint Superintendent Renee Sanchez, Champlain Valley School District, as the Commissioner for the Military Interstate Children's Compact Commission. Superintendent Sanchez's prior experience and geographic location in Chittenden County, including proximity to the Vermont National Guard, will be beneficial in this role. So there's the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion, questions for the interim secretary?
Makes sense.
All right. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of appointing Superintendent Renee Sanchez as the Commissioner for Military Interstate Children's Compact Commission, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Please raise your hand and signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? All right, the motion passes. Thank you. So with that, I think we are going to break for lunch. And we will return around 1:15 to resume the meeting. All right, so we'll stand, I guess, do we need a motion to adjourn? Or to?
No, because we're not adjourning, we're
We're not
recessing.
adjourning. Recess.
So you can recess us.
Okay, I will recess us. Thank you. All right, so we are back. It's now about 1:20, and we're at the point of our agenda where if there are any members of the public who wish to be heard, I'm not seeing anyone.
I have one person with their hand raised, Jennifer.
Perfect, all right. So if you can announce yourself and welcome.
And that person should hit *6 to unmute themselves.
My name is
I think that's
Andrea
them.
Goldman. Can,
Okay, hi.
my name is Andrea Goldman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, my name is Andrea Goldman. Some know me as Andy. I want to thank you for allowing me to comment today on such an important topic concerning Ludlow and the Expeditionary School. I'd like to provide a little context of myself and education at Ludlow. First, I'm a full-time resident of Ludlow. I have been for several years after owning property in Ludlow for about 20 years, and where my wife's family has owned property in the 80s, and she grew up spending her best times of her youth in Ludlow, Vermont. After introducing this wonderful town to me for the first time in 2001, that very weekend I was already looking to buy my first house ever here in Ludlow, which we ultimately did, and it was my wife's former fifth grade math teacher's house. I'm now the vice chairman of the Ludlow Planning Commission, and my wife is an active member of the Ludlow Village Beautification Committee. I am not here in any official capacity. I am here as a concerned citizen about Ludlow and education and the unintended consequences of Vermont's educational tax policy. As I understand Vermont's tax regulations in regards to education, the policy of using money from so-called gold towns to help educate all Vermont citizens is an incredibly well-intended policy and mission, and one that must be applauded. I do, however, as do many others, see the unintended consequences of it, and it's hurting towns like Ludlow. Why is this relevant? Ludlow used to be a thriving town that boasted many families. We were a family community for both locals and for tourists. But with so much money leaving Ludlow and insufficient amounts returning to Ludlow due to the educational tax policy, our town and our village have been seriously limited economically, and we now have limited choices for growth initiatives, but also for just maintenance and needed repairs and taking care of our residents and keeping families here. So when the topic came up of funding or not a high school in town, at a time when my family, we were not yet full-time residents, and we would have spoken out vociferously against the vote against it if we were, our town unfortunately voted against the high school in our town. Why? To save money. And I'll say that again. To save money. They sacrificed education. How sad is that? I don't have children, but I am a firm believer in education and public education. My wife and I were in tears when we heard this, and we're now seeing more unintended results of that. Families are fleeing Ludlow. We're becoming a town and a village dominated by senior citizens whom we want to take care of, and Airbnbs. Our sense of community is being threatened every day by this. I'm on the Planning Commission with a mission to try to bring back a vibrant Ludlow and a place where people want to raise their families and stay after they've had their kids and not leave, and have those kids come back when they graduate from college, but to have that education here at home. Not where people have kids and then move away, which is happening here way too much The lack of quality education right here in town is supporting that trend. So is a lack of affordable housing, driven in large part by the Airbnb, with the state, but not the local governments, benefiting from taxes from that. But that's a topic for another day in another committee. I remove that digression. Education is the fabric of our society. An affordable, quality local education is a right we all should be able to enjoy and benefit from for our futures and our town's children's futures. I myself am a product of a wonderful public education system in New York. I grew up lower middle class. I attended elementary school through high school in my hometown, and I could walk to school. I excelled in school with hard work and good teachers, not by any natural ability. I then attended State University School in New York. At Albany, I graduated magna cum laude, and I was awarded a partial scholarship to attend a top 10 law school at Duke University. Later in life, I received my MBA from Yale, and I was able to pay every cent of that Ivy League education with my own money that my family couldn't have afforded before me through government loans and not depending upon anyone else. None of this would have been possible if not for an affordable, excellent local public education that was afforded to me. I want the same for the residents of Ludlow. I want the same for every student in Vermont. For Ludlow, that opportunity is right in front of us with a wonderful school and a wonderful headmistress, Kendra and the Expeditionary School. My wife and I have had wonderful opportunities to visit the school and to spend time with Kendra and her board and see voluntary staff in action and what they've been able to do in such a short time. The opportunities that Kendra and her team have built, including a partnership with an esteemed science program from New Hampshire, just one example of the potential of the school and its staff. More importantly, we recently had the opportunity to meet current students and to see an early short preview of a play that the students are working on that was written, directed, and acted in by the students with an esteemed acting teacher who I believe is also providing her services voluntarily. And I've got to say, the play and the students, they were amazing. I can't wait to see the full play when it's ready in the coming months. So while my town, as a result of trying to save money in the past, voted against a high school in town, we recently also, at our annual town meeting, took on the tax burden of $75,000 to keep Kendra and the Expeditionary School alive for another short while, with the hope that this committee would see its way to the benefit of allowing the school to have school choice funding and enable them to have that funding to continue their amazing efforts. Addressing Vermont's statewide educational tax policy is for another day, but I invite any information that I can get from this committee about the formulas of tax receipts that go and come back, and any studies that may have been done about the unintended consequences that we are definitely seeing locally and the statewide that may also be seeing. We want everyone in Vermont to have an excellent opportunity of a great local affordable education. So I'm here today imploring this committee to please help Ludlow and Kendra and the Expeditionary School fulfill this with allowing them access to this public choice funding. I'm available for any questions. I'm happy to give you my contact information. I realize I've gone on very long. Education is near and dear to me, and I would love to see that this committee help support this great effort in Ludlow with Kendra and her staff and help all of these students and our local community, not just Ludlow, thrive. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Goldman. Are there any other members of the public who wish to be heard? Suzanne, do you see anybody else out there? There's no one physically here.
Right. They would have to push *5 to raise their hand if they wish to be recognized. I do see people on the phone.
Okay. But no one with their hand raised?
No.
Okay. *5 to raise your hand. So we do have time again at the end of our meeting if any members of the public wish to be heard. I'm not hearing anyone else, so at this point, I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is to review and approve the minutes of our March 15th, 2023 meeting, as well as our April 13th, 2023 special meeting. And I'm going to take these up one at a time. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of our March 15th, 2023 meeting? It's been moved by Kim Gleason. Is there a second? I'll second. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes of our March 15th, 2023 meeting, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please raise your hand and signify by saying nay.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay, any abstentions? Rich Werner abstaining. All right, so we've adopted the minutes. Thank you very much. And now I will move on to entertaining a motion to approve the minutes of our April 13th, 2023 special meeting. Is there a motion? Moved by Kim. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Gabrielle. Any discussion?
I had some corrections, but I'm unable to get on the internet to load them up, so I don't know what to do about that. So I just let them go. It's fine.
We can come back to this if you want to continue.
Yeah, can we come back? I had some small things that,
Okay.
but I can't connect to the internet to pull it up. So.
Okay, so I'm going to postpone voting on this until, let's do it after the item J, the presentation.
I don't think you can just let a motion hang out there.
Oh, does it need to be withdrawn?
Well, I think you need to either vote on it or
I can withdraw the motion.
do away with it, but you can't
Okay.
really leave a motion hang. At least I've never heard of it.
Okay.
Can you table it? Is that a thing?
I don't think so. I think you got to deal with the motion before you move on to something
Go
else.
ahead and vote
Want
on
me to
it.
withdraw
Okay.
it?
Okay. Tammy's saying that we can go ahead
Just
and
go ahead
vote.
and vote on it.
So, all those in favor of approving the minutes of our April 13th, 2023 special meeting, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please raise your hand and signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. All right, thank you. This takes us to board announcements. I've got a couple. So first of all, I wanted to just announce that the State Board of Ed is currently looking for 2 new student representatives, as both Gabrielle and Amara are stepping off the board when they graduate from high school. So I think their terms end in June. So we would be looking for 2 new student members to begin in July, and my understanding from the governor's office is that one of those positions would be serving a 2-year term. Non-voting the first year, voting the second year. The second student would be stepping in to complete Amara's term, serving for 1 year in a voting position. So anyone who knows of any students who might be interested can contact either Maureen or Suzanne at the agency, and they can point you in the right direction. And speaking of our students.
I just wanted to,
Yeah.
I think that Maureen told me the deadline for application is April 28th.
Yes.
Is that right?
I meant to say that. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Deadline is April 28th. So, and speaking of students, Amara, who was with us for the tour this morning but then had to leave because she's got classes this afternoon, I just wanted to recognize the fact that she won a gold medal in the state, I think it was in a levels competition for job skills in cosmetology. And she's going on to the national competition on June 19th in Atlanta, which I believe is a week-long competition. So just wanted to acknowledge Amara's accomplishment and congratulate her. She also shared with me that there were other students from CVCC who medaled. There were 2 gold medalists in the digital media arts, Ty Thornton and Gino Massey. 1 silver in plumbing and heating, and that was Cole Dezan, and then 1 bronze in plumbing and heating, Marshall Asia. So congratulations to all of the students. That's great to represent the state of Vermont. And then the last announcement that I had to make was just to notify that last Friday, the State Board of Education issued its decision in an appeal brought by the parent of a minor child pursuant to 16 VSA Section 828. In the case, the parent challenged his school district's denial of his request to pay his son's tuition to attend an independent school in New Brunswick, Canada. The board's decision affirming the school district's decision has been issued to the parties and has been posted on our website. Because this appeal may be subject to further review or proceedings, the board will not be discussing or commenting further in this decision. Are there other board announcements?
I think I'll just remind everybody, if you have any feedback for us on the draft EQS revisions, if you could get those to us by Monday, the 24th, we'll begin to take that in, theme them, and get responses so we can get those back to folks. We'll probably be sending a doodle poll for a pre-meeting if we find that we've gotten a lot of feedback that would warrant a further discussion, and we'll do a doodle poll for probably another special meeting shorter than the 4 hours that we did, and then ideally be able to have a draft for consideration for the May meeting, May 17th, and that would be probably dependent on what we get for feedback, but please do, the sooner you get it to us, the sooner we can work on getting responses back to folks. Some of it may be materials that we've waded through and can just provide a broader perspective from our decisions on where we arrived, and we've got the source material, and other things we probably will need to source out for response. So, thank you.
Any other board announcements? All right. Well, this takes us to Gabrielle with the student report.
I don't think I have much to report today. In my school district, we are currently on spring break, which was definitely needed for our student population. We're nearing the end of the year, and that can be a stressful and tiring time for students. I've definitely noticed that students are starting to get really excited for summer, and it's a little difficult for many of them to hold on as we embark on that last push to the end of the year, especially for our seniors. But other than that, I think that this spring break will just help us recharge, get ready for that last little bit, and then we can all enjoy our summers. I don't think I have anything else to report, but thank you.
When is your graduation?
My graduation is June 15th.
Any questions or comments for Gabrielle? Have you been able to go anywhere for break, or are you just taking the time off to relax?
I'm just taking the time off. Yeah.
Very necessary.
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the independent school rule implementation update. So, Meg?
Hello, can you hear me? Oops.
Yes. Is that Josh?
Yes, it is. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Is Emily with you as well?
With me, I also have Meg Porcella, who is the interim director of the Student Support Division, and Emily Simmons, general counsel. So good afternoon. Just wanted to thank you all for the opportunity to present to you an update on the implementation of the independent school rules and kind of where we're at in the process. Again, my name is Josh Sullier. I'm the interim director of the Education Quality Division at the Vermont Agency of Education.
Hey, Josh.
First,
Josh.
Yes.
Can you? It's Meg. Can you hang on 1 second? What were you asking?
Sure.
I'm just wondering, are you presenting?
Do you? We can put up the slides. Would you like us to?
Sure. That'd be great.
Unless you didn't mean that question.
I thought you were going to plug in, but do you want me to try and plug in and share them?
Then we're not going to share slides. I did not know that was part of it. I am.
Nope.
We're a well-oiled machine.
Am I good to go?
Yes. Sorry. Apologies.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I'm not sure if some of you may have received the brief PowerPoint that I
No.
developed for today's presentation.
We have not received them, so perhaps we can put them up. There's no
Happy
other way
to.
for us to see them.
Meg, let me try.
We received them today.
They came this morning.
Yeah, I can't access my Safeboard account from this computer.
Okay.
And I don't have internet, so.
I don't have my computer.
Our apologies.
Should I move forward?
Not yet, please.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
It won't connect. We've tried.
Here, you can look with me.
Admit it will not go. I do not know why. Doesn't matter, I can't get to my state board account from here anyway, so. Just forget. Firewall on my laptop.
Yeah, I wonder if that's what it was.
Like having you on the spot.
My 2021, not knowing I was getting to 2023.
They can get the picture.
I don't know if that's on or not. Take some of the cover.
Can we email it to everyone?
It's been emailed to everyone, it just went late, so they might not, they're probably
I
traveling
understand.
when it just takes some
Tammy is having trouble with the internet.
Yeah, I can't get touch.
I was using my
Internet's having
phone as a
trouble.
hotspot, so I understand.
My other thoughts, like, we could share, like, your computer
Yeah,
if it's
I'll
up,
just-
but then I
I
don't know
can-
what that does for the public not being able to see it.
I'll get to see it.
I don't know, it doesn't look like-
Well, I mean, he can share his screen on Teams and we can just watch here.
I'm sorry, but this isn't
We
working.
could do that.
I don't know if
Josh,
it's 'cause the
can you,
batteries are
yeah,
full.
did you hear, will you pull up the PowerPoint and share
That way
your,
the public can see it on Teams, right?
Sure, I can do
I
that.
can look at hers and
Okay.
she can look at yours. I'll just look
Is
at-
everyone able to, can we like buddy up? But, okay.
Oh, this is one right, the item.
Okay,
Thank you. You got it? I got it.
Thank you.
And are they able to project it from the screen
I think,
share?
yeah, I think,
Does it work for you all to catch the screen share that's happening from the presenter?
We're not online either.
Oh,
We're just recording the meeting.
got it.
Josh, will you let us know when you're sharing?
I'm sharing.
But it sounds like
the recording
It's
isn't
not-
capturing.
being, right,
Not on Teams,
the
actually.
recording isn't capturing.
I apologize. The public should be though, anyone.
You're just not going
No,
on?
because it's not a hybrid meeting, so
Oh.
the people that are virtually participating can see Josh's presentation. You need to see it there, because this won't work. So I'm plugged in, but it's
I
not
think-
coming
So the people who
That
are
the
like participating
media factory isn't
remotely
able to do it.
could see it, but I'm wondering if we link it to the meeting, does that satisfy?
We'll have it posted on the SBE website with the other materials. I just believe it didn't make it there in time for the meeting. Our apologies for that.
So can we, I want to make sure that we can view this on the screen, knowing that the recording is not capturing this, but if we link it after the meeting, does that satisfy? Okay,
I would say so.
okay, you're the resident expert.
I mean, everybody can
unofficial
see it
data.
now, and people can refer back to it. and
Okay.
Look it up while they're reviewing the recording. How many?
Okay.
Username and password for local access?
Right up there in the far left.
It is not
no.
connecting very reliably well.
I'm sorry.
It's CVCC programs,
Oh, okay.
and then the password is already.
Okay, so I think we can continue on.
Thank you all. Go ahead, Josh.
Would you like me to keep presenting?
Yes, I think we're
Yes,
ready.
please.
Okay. So again, I'm here to provide you with an update on the implementation of the independent school rules and kind of give you a snapshot of where the agency is at right now in terms of providing support and resources to the field. One of the first actions we've taken is we are pausing site visits for the remainder of the school year right through July 1st, where we will then again kind of reassess where we're at. This provides the agency independent school team some time to really focus on rolling out these new rules and developing resources and technical assistance to support the field, some of which I will speak to coming up in the following slides. Our goal within the agency is to have these site review reports that we've already completed, the reviews, ready to go internally by April 28th, so we can present them to the Independent School Subcommittee in May. Those remaining reports include Laraway Foundations, Northern Vermont, Choice Foundations, Windsor, and the Cornerstone in Arlington schools. During this pause, we do plan on taking initial applications or expansions on a case-by-case basis. Another resource we're working on developing is a survey that we are going to send out to the independent school community to determine interest in moving forward on whether or not they want to implement the new rules and accept public dollars by July 1st, 2023. And this is just to give us kind of some information and gauge kind of where we're at as far as, how many schools may determine to move forward. Yes. Again, the target date to have this completed is April 28th. Along with this survey, we will have kind of a detailed explanation of the requirements related to, the special education rules and approval of independent schools, including a frequently asked questions document to help support them in just determining their decision on moving forward. And again, this is just a survey so we can gauge who does plan to move forward on July 1st, 2023. Another piece of technical assistance we're developing are some office hours, and the target date for that is May 18th, 2023. And the idea is really to provide an opportunity for independent schools to really listen to hear about the new rules and give them an opportunity to ask questions and related to implementing them. In addition to the office hours, we are continuing to develop and revise a lot of resources, some of them current resources. So we're working on revising the independent school application to reflect the new rules, revising the rate setting application, which also includes sending that out for a few independent schools to pilot and give us feedback on. We'll be in the process of developing assurances for independent schools to sign come July 1st, 2023. And then we're working on our plan to continue and resume site reviews after July 1st, 2023. So that's a brief overview of some of the resources and technical assistance we are developing at this time. Are there any questions?
I see Kim and Tammy.
Go first. I suspect there might be the same question, Kim. Thanks, Josh. This is Tammy Colby. So we have independent schools that are already approved, right? And they're going to be having to comply with the new rules on July 1st, but they may not go back through an approval process again for several years. Can you talk to me, and this happens a lot when we have policy changes, right? But given the significant shift in the rules, in terms, particularly with respect to requirements, how is the agency proposing to handle that, right? For schools that are already approved, but yet under the old rules, but without having had a review coming up at least before July 1st now under the new rules? Same question, Kim?
Similar. Yeah. I have a spin on it, so we'll go with we'll see what comes out of the answer, and I may.
Does that make sense, Josh? Because you have a stack of schools who are approved right now, right? And they're going to be approved through July 1st. Yet the rules are changing on July 1st. How are we making sure that the schools that are already approved are going to be complying with the rules starting July 1st?
See Meg nodding her head.
Right, Emily, would you like to answer that, or would you like me to?
Absolutely. So this is on Josh's slide about development and revision of resources, that third element. So this is where we are developing a set of, they're fairly called assurances for those schools. I would caution you to not think of assurances as short or truncated. These will be fairly detailed to track the new elements, essentially, of Rule 2229, as well as some miscellaneous other rules that we need to capture.
So Emily, let me ask a follow-up question that, so they fill out an assurance and they say, you know, we're going to do this and that. They're not going back through an approval process. They're just going to send in a form that says we're complying. Is that, I just want to make sure I understand how this is going to work. Nobody's going up for reapproval under the new rules. If you're already approved, you're approved, but now you're going to be asked just to say that you are going to comply with the rules?
Yeah, you're going to be asked to submit some additional information to the agency to assure the agency that you will be complying with the new rules after July 1 coming up. And there will be some examination of that document by the agency. We're fuzzy still on exactly what that document looks like, and therefore still can't answer a detailed question about our examination of those documents, but it will be more than the assurance document that you're familiar with from the past year, right? That's a one-page document. More than that, for sure.
What's the if-then on this? And what I mean by that is, so you get an assurance document and you decide, based on whatever process you put in place, and I understand you're still developing, but they go through a process and you say, no, these assurances, they don't meet the assurances. They're not going to comply. Is it the agency's intent then to revoke their approval?
Yes.
Okay.
Kim?
I think maybe to just remind people, the change July 1 is there is a new category of independent schools, and that will be those eligible to receive public tuition. So you could have been an approved independent school, and if you were recognized, you didn't get public tuition. If you were approved, you got public tuition. Come July 1, if you're not able or willing to serve students with special needs, you are no longer eligible to receive public tuition. You may still be approved, but no longer eligible to receive public tuition. It's a substantial change, and it created a third category. So I'm glad to hear that there's an assurance process. I don't know what those indicators look like. It sounds like you guys might not know either. I think I'm a little concerned timing-wise that families who have been sending their students to schools that have been approved and been receiving public tuition, it's mid-April and they may not know yet. It seems as though I'm not even sure, even for the independent schools or the families, how this timeline between now and July 1, where they may have been attending a school that was eligible to receive public tuition, that school may not be able or willing to serve students with special needs, consequently may not be receiving public tuition anymore. Where are their decision points for families in their enrollment process? How do you all view this working? I feel concerned for families and the independent schools in this situation.
Kim, the survey that is going out in about 10 days is our information gathering to inform those decisions. So we assume we will get some number of schools that are going to communicate that opt out of the new status of an independent school eligible to receive public funds, and that will be the first cut, sort of parent and student communities that need to be informed. That's not going to be an option next year if you wish to attend on your public tuition basis.
And Emily, this is Jennifer. The survey, as I understand it, is going out in 10 days, but the open office hours won't happen until after that. So when you're sending out the survey, is there, I guess I'm a little concerned about maybe the cart going before the horse, and is the school going to be able to have the information that it needs to be able to make an informed decision on the April 28th survey before it has the opportunity to attend the office hours to, really understand what's required?
Yes, that's one approach. I would tell you, Jennifer, we ended up going with an approach where we get the survey, then have the detailed conversation and presentation the FAQs, and then seek the assurances. So that's kind of the 3-step process that we're rolling out. And I'm thinking of it as like we're getting deeper and deeper into the detail and getting more and more solid understanding and commitment on the part of the schools.
Okay.
And
sorry. No, go ahead.
No, this is.
Well, I'm just curious, with the survey, is that a final decision? I mean, okay. So if someone comes back and says, no, we are not interested in doing this, they are able to change their mind, the way you're envisioning this?
That's our intention. And also, in order for independent schools to be able to know what it means, when Josh was presenting the slide about the survey, he spoke about some guidance. So just very detailed information for the independent schools so that they can then fill out that survey to say no or yes. And the survey information is really just for us to have kind of because we just don't know. And then drill down deeper into being able to provide more and more information, especially around the application process.
Okay.
And the assurances.
A school could initially say no,
Yes,
but then
it's
based on more
non-binding.
information, say
Yep.
yes, and similarly, someone could say yes,
Yes,
and then
and the
based on
teacher-
more information, say no.
It will be non-binding.
Okay.
Is there a deadline for return of the survey and/or for return of the assurance, such that the AOE has adequate time before July 1 to render an opinion on the ability to serve students with special needs? What are the deadlines in those processes?
Emily? Josh?
Those are in development, those deadlines, for the survey and both for the assurances.
Do you have a sense of what the agency needs to be able to respond in review assurances and what that process looks like on your end from a capacity standpoint? Again, we're mid-April, and what is the default position? No money goes out the door after July 1st, I presume?
Well, July 1st is when most schools are out for the summer camp. So we're really looking at the start of the school year for the final, everyone needs to be settled and in their places. We do not need to have the review of the assurances done by July 1st because that's the date the rules start being effective.
But for
Before
families'
school
enrollment
starts.
decisions, Emily, for families' enrollment decisions and independent schools budgeting and staffing, and if those families are not going because those schools are no longer eligible to serve or to receive public tuition, even the public school or other independent schools' ability to enroll with even enrollment capacity limitations, it may be able to wait another month or two whether or not the check's going to go out the door, but the decision-making process for enrollment, I'm sure, is happening as we speak for families and what their decisions are for the coming year without causing tremendous disruption to students' learning.
Those are all factors that we're aware of and working to take into account in this process. And it is a short process, and it is somewhat a matter of agency capacity. It's a lot for us to balance.
Yeah, I know that independent schools probably have been working from these set of expectations for a while now. I'm finding myself frustrated with the timing for families and schools with where we are right now. I know there's nothing to be done about that now. I guess my question remains, what is the default position? I presume that the state's default position is we're not sending tuition out the door should these institutions not have chosen to be willing and proven capable of serving students with special needs. I presume that's the default position?
we'll have to have at minimum the assurance for each approved independent school choosing to accept public tuition.
And then
Whether or not they have met the assurances at that moment, or will there be like a ramp up for implementation, like some allowances under the assurance process?
Let me think about how that answer goes. So I think that's Jenna.
Sorry.
The assurances are as of the start of the school year. So we'll imagine a series of assurances that say, can you assure that in the 23-24 school year and going forward that the school has A, B, C, tracking the rules?
So Emily, can I ask a clarifying question? It's Heather. I think the intention is that the assurances is also for the schools themselves to take a look at that and say, I can't assure this, so therefore I'm not going to go forward with being an approved school that can take public dollars. So I think that's also another place where parents would know as soon as we're doing that assurance if the school itself feels like we're not going to be able to do this.
That was partially why I was asking about deadlines, because the survey is one thing. The guidance, which will maybe help inform their response on the survey, would seem as though that should go out simultaneously so they can know what would be expected of them if they say yes or no on the survey. And then that would be their opportunity to communicate with families in a timeline that might let families seek other options for a coming year if that were important for their financial situation. I know that the ramp up, Jenna, thinking about it, was like the delayed implementation was that extra year, I think, for independent schools to comply with some of the requirements that were related to 2360 and 1300, the Act 173. Yeah.
And I think this was not our intention to have it come across this way, but the information that Josh spoke about when he was talking about the survey will come out before it. And even though the information won't be the assurances, it will telegraph what those assurances are. So it's absolutely our intention to have that information go out as now-ish as we can, and then the survey to see where we are, what are we really looking at, and then get further and further along with the concrete information and the office hours. So we're thinking in a very similar way for giving information to the independent schools.
So the substance of what's going to ultimately end up in the assurances is going to go into the survey, but the format of the assurances is still being developed. Am I understanding that correctly?
The substance is going to go into the guidance, the information that we put out. The survey is just going to be very simple, what are your thoughts right now? Yes, no. But the information letting folks know what it is that we're talking about will go out as soon as we can get the language finalized.
So is that also April 28th or?
She said mid-May.
I want it to be before the survey goes live. I feel like we need
Didn't you say it was
the assurances, yes, but this guidance, the information about what it is that we're really talking about needs to at least be with the survey, if not before.
And that's kind of what I'm thinking. So not that you guys were going to have like the final form of the assurance, like maybe that's going to take another month or whatever. Right. But the content, I mean, I think you've got a pretty good sense.
Explicating what the difference is, right? It's explicating the difference in these rules, and that is our intention.
Yeah, and so that information will be communicated with, that'll be in the guidance that's going to go out with the survey.
Correct.
Okay.
Heather, I'm sorry, Tammy. Heather.
Okay. I was just going to follow up on Kim's point, though, that, if I was a parent of a student in a school who no longer is going to be serving students with IEPs, and I find out about that on July 2nd, and I live in an area where there are very few choices, this is a problem. That's a problem. And so I don't see in a timeline, like this timeline is making me really uncomfortable because of that. Like I would not want to be a parent on July 2nd finding out that the plan for my child with an IEP is completely going sideways on July 2nd, particularly in areas of the state where we have independent schools, which are primarily the only K-12 educational opportunity available to students. So what are we going to do about that situation? Where we have an independent school that is the primary provider of K-12 education in an area of the state, decides not to, on July 1st, to provide special education services anymore, and you have X number of students with IEPs. What are we doing there? What's the plan?
Well, and I think maybe to expand that, Tammy, it doesn't matter whether your child's on an IEP or not. If they aren't willing or able to serve, the tuition's not going.
Well, I understand
So,
that. I mean,
so it's both and. So
and
any
both.
parent
It's and
of
both.
any student attending a school that isn't willing or able, more complicated perhaps by whether or not that student has services, but any student, if they aren't willing or able to serve, would no longer have the tuition available to them.
So if
I agree with
if
you on
I may
that.
clarify, where that responsibility actually lies is at the LEA. So
SEA
if
is
that,
responsible for the IEP.
the LEA is responsible for ensuring that students on IEPs get their services met. If an independent school that had been providing those services is no longer available, the LEA is still responsible for finding and securing those IEP services for students.
I have a question.
Mohammed?
Emily or everyone around me right here, this is Mohammed. I'm curious about how families with limited English would get this information. Because I find this really too soon, to be honest, and time is very sensitive. Do we have any plans out there, talking about the survey, for example, would the survey itself be interpreted or translated, or have families with limited English, or even every family out there with 100% like native English speakers already have some information around what's going on right now? So it is not a boom one day and everyone is like, oh, what am I going to do tomorrow? I'm curious about the communication piece.
I can speak to, the survey is for the independent schools themselves. And so I would hope that there would be communication between the independent school head and families. I obviously can't speak to that. But providing our documents in multiple languages is something that we are committed to doing as best we can.
Thank you.
Heather?
So I just wanted to clarify, because I think there might be a piece missing here, and perhaps a slide missing. So the resources that are being reframed or developed, I think what you're saying, Meg, is that some of those will actually be ready before the survey goes out to independent schools, because they need to understand what it is that they're actually making a decision about, even if it's a non-binding decision. And I just want to clarify that. That is slated for nine days, right? By the 28th. It's now the 19th. So that's going out really soon, ideally next week, if not soon the week after. And we'll do that. We can make that happen. So I just want to clarify that. I think we're all maybe talking about the same thing, but maybe it just wasn't clarified in more of a timeline fashion that might have been useful.
And I think the frustration is that I think we're all kind of identifying the very, very, very short timeline that we find ourselves in the middle of April. I know that this is a conversation that I've been having since last September. I would love to be able to go back in time and expand that window, but I think the reality is this is where we are. I'm glad the work is being done. You know, I think it would have been helpful if it had started sooner, but this is where we are, and I think the plan, I think, makes sense under the circumstances. Rich?
Oh, go ahead, Kim.
No, go ahead.
Well, I don't think Kim's question's been answered yet, and I'm kind of curious too. And, you know, we jump back to the IEP stuff, but a lot of towns tuition all their students, all their secondary students, and some towns tuition all their students. And so what happens, what I'm seeing, if I'm hearing this right, is these independent schools that are now able to receive funds may not be able to receive funds. And if we don't notify them, then the parents can't make a decision what they're going to do with, don't even worry about students with IEPs, just the regular students. So how do they know, and how has the state been telling parents that you got to really pay attention to this, because, you know, although your school's been receiving funds for years, they may not be able to, and how many do we project aren't going to do it, and is there a way? I kind of think that's more what you were asking.
Well, and I think this timeline for implementation for July 1, 2023 has been known for years. Just knowing, because I had worked on 2360 and 1300, and the first thing I did on the state board, where I was like deer in the headlights, wondering what all this meant. But Act 173 really set out those timelines, and so I believe in earnest probably independent schools have been working towards that end. But I would agree with you that I'm not sure that a lay parent or person would have perspective to understand the implications of what's coming, and to not have a process that had begun. I mean, to Jennifer's point, we've been asking for quite some time now about this timeline for these reasons, particularly as we were approving independent schools through the fall, recognizing that these rules were going to affect everybody. And so, because we had a whole new category of independent schools, and we know how labor-intensive the approval process is. So that's more to say, I'm in agreement with you that I'm not sure how families would know. Maybe the LEAs, the school boards where they are tuitioning are keeping people informed. Maybe in an ideal world that would be happening, but it's somewhat complicated. The date isn't. The implications of the date aren't. The process to remedy that has not been articulated in a way that people would have known. So if I'm thinking in an old school board hat, I'm not sure that I would have felt as though I had the information to be communicating, because I would maybe have felt I was communicating on behalf of or instead of the independent schools, who will have the ultimate decision about how they go about it, but they may not have had the information to do it. Again, I don't know that it can be remedied. I'm just saying, I think you're right. Communication probably hasn't happened, and I don't.
Well, and I can speak on that. As a chairman of a school district that tuitions their secondary students, I did not realize this until we're having this conversation today. And I try to follow, but, you know, between having to make a living in Vermont and having to, you know, take care of commitments, and then try to be on the school board, and I don't know, I don't ever recall a communique from anybody saying that, hey, just so you're aware, on July 1st, here's a new, I knew there was the approval, I knew the court decision was going to give us some fits, but I don't know if it's really been published. And I think it's an important thing, because, you know, a lot of people do go to, you know, that have the school choice, do take advantage of it, and they go to a lot of different, you know, whatever fits best for the student. Believe it or not, we're actually putting the student first in some places, and I just don't think it's been communicated very well. And I think that not even to the schools, but to families and tuitioning towns, and I think that's an important thing that really should happen. And I'll shut up now.
If I may.
Yeah. So I just want to clarify, and I think Kim made the great point. This work has been going on for years. We've been working on these rules for years. So there isn't going to be anything earth-shatteringly new in the materials that we're putting out. We're packaging them so folks who maybe need, you know, have had trouble perhaps deciphering legalese, which most folks can't do, can actually think about, you know, can actually share that information with parents if they'd like to, can make a more, the best informed decision, as we've been talking about. So we're doing the best we can. I think we're going to take this feedback certainly back and hold to some tight timelines. It's, our structure as a state really doesn't have the agency of education doing much that's direct with parents. That's our local control construct. And so we're assuming our job is to actually hold those intermediary structures to account. And so we're assuming that the local structures are the ones that are actually having the conversations with families and communities. If we want that to change, we can have a discussion about that. But that's really where our frame is.
But I'm sorry, Heather, thank you. I guess I would just say that having the independents I know they know the rules because I think Mill probably keeps people informed, and they were very involved in the rulemaking process, and Act 173 has been known for a long time, and this deadline has been known for a long time. The mechanics of what it will look like for their election to participate or not was an agency sort of piece of the work that would have benefited from a bigger timeline for people to have that information, make those decisions. If school boards knew in January that their independent schools with whom they've been partnering and sending tuition were going to need to elect no longer to receive tuition because they weren't in a position to be able to serve students with special needs, that would be a different conversation with their communities. I think we didn't have choice, so I don't know how challenging it must be. I know engagement with community is hard when you're operating pre-K-12, and I'm suspecting engagement with community may be even more difficult where those students are going is more dispersed. And so I empathize with the challenges of boards trying to have those conversations, particularly when those independents may not know whether they can check the boxes in as much as they can understand of the way the rule's written and what that would look like operationally. And so I think we are putting people, unfortunately, in a difficult situation, and it is less about local control in this, and I appreciate that many times the local control challenge makes uniform communication difficult. I think in this case, it's not a uniform situation, and folks will find themselves in an unfortunate situation to be describing things that they are not able to be as well informed as they would need to be when parents are in a position to need to make a decision. And even if I think about it from a budgetary standpoint, like budgets have already been passed, so I know it's all very complicated, and I think urgency cannot be probably overstated at this point. And then, if we're good on that, I'm wondering if while we're doing this, we're going to also ask them to complete the attestation for compliance with public accommodations in enrollment and hiring practices, because we had thought that was happening last May, and apparently there wasn't a construct for that. And I don't know, that has happened on a voluntary basis, and we being those of us who developed the rules last May when they became effective, expected that was an expectation, not for their next re-up in 3 or 5 years, but that it was ongoing and effective on passage.
Will that be part of the assurances that are being developed? Because if not, I might recommend that it should be.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Totally.
All right.
And should they decide they're not complying with the special education requirements, can they have a second form that they could complete so that they could at least complete the assurances regarding public accommodations, so it's not left to a voluntary effort coordinated through Visa, but rather a coordinated effort through the agency?
I'm not prepared to answer that today.
Well, and the way I read 2200 is the non-discrimination language is a condition of approval status. The special ed is a condition of approval to receive public funds. So you can't you can't be qualified to receive public funds unless you're complying with all of 2200. It is possible, currently as the 2200 is written, that you could be approved, in which case you would be you'd be committing to the non-discrimination on your website and your practices, but that you would not be approved to receive public funds because you're not complying with the special ed requirements.
Understood. I'm just wondering, though, that piece that we thought was effective last May, what is the construct for assuring that that's happening currently for all approved independent schools?
So as I understood Emily to say, that's going to be part of the assurances that they're sending out to schools. So,
But they may just not be complying with assurance for the serving students with special needs and may not have otherwise voluntarily completed the assurance for complying with public accommodations.
well, I think Emily's taking all of this under advisement, but I think it would be possible, and Emily, I don't want to put words in your mouth, that you could complete an assurance saying that you are complying with the non-discrimination language, but that you will not be able to comply with the special ed requirements. And both of those data points are going to be teased out in the assurance.
Separate and distinct.
Am I correct, Emily?
That might be our approach. I'm not committing to that today. I want to see the survey results and design the form of the assurances based on sort of the breakdown of who's in and out for the new rules.
Can I?
And let me just point out that we are at time. Look, just.
Oh, I was going to say, just to follow up, then it'll happen. You're just not sure how, right? Like, we wouldn't end up getting to July 1 and having some schools not have completed anything and still be considered approved.
Well, the rules apply to them regardless. I know you know that, but I don't want to lose sight of that just for the benefit of everybody listening in. Whether or not a school completes annual or, this past year assurance, the rule that they may not discriminate against a protected class is in place and is enforceable, right? So whether we will send out a blanket assurance for one or more rules is still an open question.
Got it. Thank you. And then this is just a question I'm going to put out there, and then you may not understandably have an answer to it, but it's one that's sort of rolling around in my head. Is there a liability or a concern with the state board or others approving schools that discriminate against students with special needs? Again, I'm just sort of thinking through the process of having 3 categories. The tuition is only eligible if they are not discriminating against students with special needs. But we would still have a category called approved independent schools, which means we're actively approving a school which is electing to discriminate against students with special needs. Is that a liability or a problem for us as a state board of ed?
I'm not sure you can say that they're discriminating. They might just not be able to support the educational requirements, and that's a separate consideration. So a school might elect to not.
I'm just wondering if we need to change a name or something.
Well,
That was a very legitimate, literal question.
But I think a school might elect to not provide special ed for any number of reasons, and those reasons are not, by definition, discriminatory.
Is that how you would see it, Emily?
Yes.
Okay.
Any further questions before we move on to the next item? All right. Thank you. Thank you all.
You're welcome.
Okay, so next on the agenda is an update from the Lincoln School District. Do we have Jen Oldham with us on the line? Oh, yes, if you wish to speak, if you could hit *5, and that will allow Maureen to know who you are. So *5 to raise your hand, and then *6 to unmute. And my first question is whether Jen Oldham is with us. So Jen, if you are, please hit *5 and then *6. If anyone from the Lincoln School District is on the line, if you could hit *5 to raise your hand. And *6 to unmute.
Very difficult to do a meeting like this, isn't it?
Many hands make light work.
The last time we were together, I think Tammy was on this big screen.
1828.
Should be all set.
Okay. Phone number ending in 1828. I believe your hand is raised and you are unmuted. So you're not seeing anybody?
I've unmuted 1828.
Okay. Phone number ending in 1828, do you wish to address the board? So, and I'm seeing Jody, are you ready to go ahead with the presentation? Is everybody here for that?
Yes.
Okay. So what we might do is we're going to table the Lincoln School District update for now and move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the DEI presentation. And if the Lincoln School District comes on the line, I don't know if there's a way for us to know, but we will circle back to them.
Can you suggest they leave the meeting and come back?
Okay.
Sometimes that resets it, because everything looks like it should be.
Okay, and if someone is having trouble, if you could exit the meeting and then log back into it, that might help things too. So we.
Okay, so this is Madeline Crudo-Burke, and I am in the meeting now. I'm waiting for Jen Oldman. I know that she has the code, so I'm not exactly sure. She's saying that she can't get in either. I did have trouble getting in.
Okay.
So I do think it's prudent for you to move on, and then we'll keep trying to get Jen in here.
Will you be available at 3 o'clock? If we push you to 3, is that okay?
I'm only available for 15 minutes, but I know that Jen will be. She's still muted, so I don't think she realizes. I'm going to text her now that she has to do #5 and then #6.
Do you have the last 4 digits of her number? Maybe Maureen can help?
The last 4 digits.
You said you
She's
can.
already done that, she says. Let's say. Jen's telephone number is,
Just the last 4 digits.
yeah.
I'm not sure she's in, because everybody's unmuted. So.
Okay. We're not seeing her.
Last 4 digits are 6383.
She's there and her mic is enabled, so I don't.
Okay. Maureen is saying that her mic is enabled.
Okay, I'm going to have to tell her. Okay. I'm
Yes,
going to just.
sometimes disconnecting and coming back on is helpful.
She could also call her.
Okay.
She could
Okay,
also call
hold
her.
on.
I don't know that we can call her.
I'll just let her know.
I don't know if we can do that.
And I guess the reverse is, are you guys okay if we're running late? Or do you do you have a hard stop? Just trying to figure out like.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have a hard stop because I'm actually sitting outside a physician's office. So I have a hard stop, but Jen can continue.
Okay, well, I'm just looking at our next presentation and I'm trying to figure out like whose time is less flexible.
Yeah. I just texted Jen again. She's getting out and going back in, hitting pound 5 and then pound 6.
Correct.
So I think you have to do whatever prudent for you.
Is it pound or star?
Well, it is star, not, thank you.
Star, yes.
I'll take all the help I can get.
I know, I'm sorry.
We're flexible.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see if this is, I'm texting her as we're talking. Thank you for your flexibility and your patience. Let's see if she's got it.
Is she back in yet?
Not yet.
Okay. So we could have had that last conversation go on longer.
I'm going to tell her that we're going to move on. You guys are going to move on.
Well, and this is a silly question, but is it possible, are you guys in the same location? Could you be on
We're
your
not.
phone? Okay.
We're not in the same location. I'm actually in another state.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to tell her that you're moving us to 3.
Oh, there she is.
Oh, she just got on.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
I heard the
There you
magic
go.
ding.
Thank you.
Such a happy noise.
Thank you.
Her mic is enabled, so she should do star 6 to unmute.
Okay, so Jen, you should do star 6 to unmute. Your mic has been enabled.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. That was stressful.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So this is the update from the Lincoln School District. This is agenda item H, just so we're all on the same page. And we've got Jen Oldham, who is with us here today, as well as, and I'm sorry, I don't know the other person.
Madeline Crudo-Burke, I'm the acting superintendent.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Would you guys like to present anything before we go to questions?
I think that, I'll just say that we have been continuing to make progress. And as I said, it's been very busy, and I was able to get the report done, but not a timeline. Hopefully there was enough information in there that people were able to get the information they needed. And I think that it would just be best for us to go to questions and answers.
Okay. Board members? Tammy?
Hi, Jen. This is Tammy Colby. I think it might be helpful if I have a bunch of questions about staffing. So perhaps might be useful for us to go to your attachment E and just use that as an anchor for our conversation. So can you help me understand which positions have been filled or committed or commitments been made by staff? I understand that the intent to return forms were due to Mount Abe on April 15th, and I also believe they were due to you by today. So I'm hopeful that you have a sense of what positions you have filled. And 2 places, I'd like to go through the full thing, but I'll just signal 2 places I'm most concerned, is with respect to the leadership team, and as well as your special education staff. But if we could talk through what do you have for commitments?
Right now, we have commitments for everybody except for 1 full-time food service staff, 1 part-time guidance counselor, which actually that has been resolved because another position is going to work another day, add a day to take that over. So that position is filled. And then I believe we're still waiting for a commitment to return from the 5-6 teacher.
Okay.
Jen, I have that commitment. I got it verbally this morning.
Okay, so we have a verbal commitment for 5-6. So everything is filled but 1 food service position, and we are currently under negotiation with the business manager position.
And is that
Madeline will.
That's not your person. That's not Brittany. You have someone you're hiring for that, you're under negotiations.
Yes, it is Brittany, but we're going to hire her in the position.
Okay. Okay. And then with respect to the Special Services Director, have you hired for that position?
Yes, we have hired Madeline, who's our superintendent, is a special education, special services is her main area of expertise. And our special educator, it will also be our special services director. So the .5 special services director and the .5 special educator are the same person.
Okay, so that'll be one FTE. And then a quick, Madeline, are you currently licensed in Vermont as a superintendent?
I have applied for my license as a superintendent, and it's being reviewed. I have a license in New Hampshire, and I am a retired licensed special education administrator, principal, and superintendent in the state of Vermont, so I've applied for relicensure.
Okay.
Everything has been submitted.
Okay, because I didn't see your name in the database yet, so.
Yep.
Okay. A couple other questions. With respect to your special education services, in the report you say special education services that cannot be met in school district will be provided through contract with the counseling services of Addison County or other service providers. I'm assuming that the CSAC will do counseling-related services. I was unclear about your plans for OT and PT and other related services.
I'm going to address that, Jen. So we don't currently have anybody, if you can believe this, it happens to be true right now. We don't have anybody currently receiving services for OTPT in their current IEP. I did contract for speech-language pathologists and have hired someone to cover kindergarten, screening, referrals, evaluation, and direct service, pre-K through 6. Children in grades 7 through 12 will be receiving their special education instruction, including their specialized support if it's outside of regular special educator through the school that they're in, and will be billed for those services.
Okay. And you have an RFP out for your transportation. The bids are due May 19th. Do you have a plan for what you will do if you receive no bids?
Yeah, well, my understanding is I've talked to a couple of business managers and one superintendent, and my understanding is that very infrequently in small districts do people bid. But you're right, the RFP is out, and we are going to be negotiating directly with Betcha.
Okay, so you're going to Betcha. Okay. With respect to cash flow, what's your cash flow management plan for starting on July 1st? I know that you have authorization to borrow. But there's going to be a time period between when you start operations and when it is that you get your first payments from the Ed Fund. Have you set up a line of credit or something along those lines?
Yes, we will be getting a loan like small school districts do to cover the amount of money we need between July 1 and in October when the taxes come due.
Okay, but that's still to be determined. You haven't done that yet?
Well, no, we have the relationship with the bank who has committed to doing that, but we haven't finished work yet.
Okay, great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And then my last question is, on the first page, you mentioned that you're seeing an enrollment increase from currently homeschooled students and enrollment from non-district students. Can you help me understand what that means? 6 to 9%, are those all grade levels? Is that elementary? Are those tuition? Because I'm noticing that 40% of your budget is tuition for secondary students now.
Yes.
Jen, do you have that? Okay.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is, one, we have 4 requests from Ripton for 6th graders to come in because Ripton has gone back is in Addison Central, and they're moving the Ripton 6th graders into the middle school. So we have requests from Ripton, and we also have homeschooled students who are students who have been homeschooled who are enrolling. And I think we have some requests from Bristol, but they probably won't be able to afford the tuition. So I think, Madeline, you have a better idea.
Yeah, I do. So right now, we've had some formal requests from non-resident parents who are asking for the children to attend school have asked for the dollar amount. In addition to that, we've taken back 4 homeschooled children, and we just had a new family move into Lincoln and registered today. So we have not approved the tuition for non-residents. No one has made a formal request, but they have viewed the building, they've signed the paperwork, and they've gotten a policy. Our policy says that they will get a policy, and they'll have to sign that they have read and understand the terms of the non-resident agreement for participation in the school. So at this point, it looks like at least 6 confirmed, K through 6, and a possible 4 other children.
And the other 4 are in 7 through 12? Or is that?
No, the other 4 are children, 2 children from Ripton and 2 children from Bristol.
So also K-6?
Yeah.
Okay.
And where's the money coming from the Ripton children? Is that private pay? Like, I'm confused there.
Yeah, at this point, yeah, go ahead, Jen, that's right.
Yeah. Right now, they've requested information and they're touring the building, but it's up to the parents and the Ripton district to decide if they can, commit to the tuition or not.
Okay.
So I think Alan said we have 4 or 6 confirmed and then 4 outstanding, I think tuition is an issue.
So you're not seeing any new 7 to 12 graders?
Well, we're still doing, just so that you know, we have a process for residency and request. We're taking requests from parents that the parents can enroll the children in any school in the area that is approved. And so we are still going through those. We're getting them on a pretty regular basis, and we're going through them every week. So that pile is not complete. We're matching it against the residency list that we have compiled earlier in the year. So we don't have a complete picture of that just yet.
Okay. Heather?
Hi, this is Heather Boucher. Just a quick question I had. So I noticed that your principal for the school is a .6. Your classroom instructors are all full FTEs. Can you give a better sense of like how many folks are going to be in the school full-time at any one point in time? I'm trying to get a better sense of what the day looks like and how many folks are there.
Well, the principal will be there all the time because she's also the .4 librarian.
Okay.
The math apprentice principal will be there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, custodian 11-ish, no, 12. I mean, the only people who aren't there in the building during the day on a regular basis are phys ed, music, and art. The nurse is there 2 days a week now, so will be there 3 days a week. The special educator will be there the entire time, also acting as the special services director. I mean, the makeup of the adults in the building is more or less exactly the same as it's been.
May I ask a follow-up question on that? This is Tammy, I'm gonna follow up on Heather's question. You've got a .4, a .2, a .4, and for phys ed, music, and art. My understanding is those originally were shared positions with MAUSD. Did those teachers commit to coming to Lincoln on a fractional basis, or what? How did that get sorted out? Because that was a question we had last time about how that was going to get sorted out. They did. They committed to coming in the part-time.
They're going to keep a fractional. What we requested from MAUSD was that MAUSD continued to employ them, but we pay for the fraction of their salary. And MAUSD declined, but you are still able to get your full benefits if you have fractional employment from two different districts. So they will basically have fractional employment from us and fractional employment from NAUSD.
Okay. And you have commitments in they've given you a written commitment on that? Those teachers? Okay, because they've given up their bumping rights then.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if I could follow up on that just to understand, and I'm going to admit to not being completely sure I remember this accurately, but so you are eligible for benefits after a certain stated number of hours, but if they are not full-time, they are proportionally covered for those benefits. So if they're only fractional for you and less than full-time for the MAUSD, how does that impact the cost of their benefits? They are certainly eligible for them, but if you're not full-time, then the district isn't paying the full cost of those healthcare benefits. They have a fractional responsibility.
Right. So we will pay the fractional cost of how much they're working with us.
Got it. So from their perspective, they still have full coverage?
Correct.
Yeah, they just lose their bumping rights.
Right, right.
And then I guess my last question is, can you talk to me a little bit about your non-resident tuition students policy and sort of the criteria you will use to decide whether or not certain students from outside your district can enroll or not?
Well, one thing that I can tell you is that the policy also doubles up against or backs up against the class size policy. So, and it's pretty clear in there that provided there is room and that there is it's a non-discriminatory policy. We understand that we, for example, would not turn away a special education student who has reasonable needs, and we wouldn't turn away someone who has ADA issues. And the caveat there would be we're taking each individual request individually.
There's no
So it depends on
is
the
there a
class.
policy?
It depends on whether the class can accommodate them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and we have the class size policy now.
Yeah, you're getting some shaking heads here.
No, I'm
We're
actually
asking about a
reading your
policy.
policy
Yeah,
right
a policy.
now. Yeah.
Around admission.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry, I've got background noise, so I didn't hear you at all.
What would be your plan in developing a policy around admissions?
We already have an existing policy. I will pull it up and read it.
Applicants may be denied based on space, staffing, class size, or other factors, so long as criteria are consistent with non-discrimination policies and laws. That's what they say.
Yeah, thank you. So why are you asking me about a policy when you already have one?
No, I just pulled it up when you said that. I got curious about it because you were talking about making decisions about Ripton students. That's why I was asking about what your policy was, and then.
Okay.
And I guess I just had a little bit of a pause when you described we would take students with special needs or ADA as long as they were reasonable or something. You used some qualifier that caused me a little bit of a pause, which I thought was not something that is allowable when you receive federal dollars and state special ed dollars.
Yeah, I've got a lot of background noise. I'm sitting in a parking garage.
So
I'm sorry. I think you were addressing me.
Well, the VSBA is in the process of updating their policy, correct? I believe they are because it was.
On non-resident students. I was referencing, you said that you would not deny a non-resident student with special needs or ADA requirements as long as they were reasonable, or you used some qualifier that caused me a little bit of a pause.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's no qualifier. I'm sorry. I mean, we're following the policy, and we're referring to the class size because, of course, we also just negotiated a master agreement, and the class size was in the master agreement as well. So that's really, at this point, the only qualifier.
It does say in the policy, Kim, in the judgment of the principal, if a failure to abide by the school rules is detrimental to the education of the student or of others, the principal may recommend to the superintendent and the board of directors that the student be disenrolled.
So I would recommend, knowing that the VSBA is in the process of updating their guidance on this and developing their model policy, that when the VSBA comes out with that new model policy, your enrollment policy should be brought into alignment with what the VSBA model policy looks like. So if that was not already on your radar, I would recommend that you do that.
That policy, we reviewed a lot of different policies of a lot of different districts. So that, whatever you're quoting exists in other schools. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. We've followed all the VSBA policy recommendations to the T.
Okay. Well, I know that their model policy is being updated because it was problematic.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah. I think we have you scheduled to come back in May with another update. And I think what I would love is with this attachment E that you have, and it sounds like, most positions have been filled, which is great. I would find it really helpful if you could sort of group the position, or I guess for each person, if we could have an understanding of, this person is 0.3 this, 0.4 that, and have the breakdown by the human person as well as by the position, if that makes sense. Because I know that, I've heard a couple of questions today, and I think it's helpful to know that the same person is doing special ed as well as special services, or the same person as the principal and the librarian. So would you be able to provide an updated list that kind of crunches that same data, but, from the human who's serving in that position? Are you still there?
Oh dear. Maybe not. I know. I don't know if they could also still hear, but if there are any that are operating under provisional license, that would be helpful to know. Knowing that some of these special services are separate, I think they're separate licensure or certifications. And again, I'll sort of reveal my not full knowledge of that stuff, but I think I'm right in that it exists.
And along with that, just an update on the superintendent's license. Because that's a pretty key position here.
Yeah.
Now there's not even a provisional license.
Tammy, this might be a question that you would know, but is it okay that the director is the same as the special educator? Does there have to be an appellate chain? I don't know. Okay, then, okay. Great.
They can be all
of
act
them.
as the LEA and provide services.
Okay.
But that person needs to be licensed.
Right.
For that position.
both.
For both.
The
And I
admin
don't-
and the
right,
special ed.
I'm unclear whether or not that person is licensed.
So
They
probably,
may be
if they
seeking
can still
licensure.
hear us,
So
maybe
to-
it's the
to Jennifer's point,
licensure
I think we need
and
to understand the
provisions.
license
Yeah.
status.
Okay.
From my perspective, particularly with respect to the superintendent. I know she's highly qualified and, has lots of experience.
So I'm just gonna
You
say
have to be licensed to operate a
License
school.
status for each position.
I think
I'm not clear on capping a class size under contract.
In the car, in the garage thing.
Oh, we're back.
Yeah. Yeah. We can hear you again.
Their teacher's contract could have class size
But if somebody
guidelines.
moves into the town,
Yeah, I know. That
How
can
would
trigger
you
hiring.
cap-
Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Yeah, we hear you. We hear you now.
Great. So we lost you for a good minute or two because we had some technical errors. So sorry.
So you have to come back in May, and I guess I was querying the need to do that, given that you've had this update and May is just, a few weeks away. And our hope was that we could come back in January and update you on where we are with how things are going this year and looking forward. And hopefully the Agency of Education will be able to come out and do an EQS review, because that sort of underlies a lot of these, a lot of the concerns or issues or questions that are being asked. But the only way to be able to determine our success, as I see it from your perspective, is to have some kind of audit of how we're doing.
And don't take this the wrong way. I think what I'm looking at the board doing is kind of helping to think through things with you, just to ensure that you are successful in what you're doing, and to, ask things that might prompt you to, make sure that everything is ready to go by July 1st. So I think the board is very much interested in ensuring that you do succeed. It's not, I don't think we're trying to trap you at all, and I hope that our questions aren't being interpreted that way. When we were down for those couple of minutes, a couple of things that the board had identified as being helpful that we would like to see is, and I think this is maybe where we lost you, I was saying that it would be helpful from my perspective to understand, instead of by position, and, you've given us sort of the breakdown of positions and the part-time of each position. I would love to see the data run by human, and for each human, which proportionate share of which job they will be doing. Because it would just be helpful for me to see that information that way. There's also been a request for an update on the superintendent's licensure. Also, the license status for each position, and even if it's one person doing, multiple roles, that each one of those multiple roles, if you could provide the statement that they are licensed for each of those individual roles. And then also, if anyone is operating under a provisional license, who that person is, what the position is. Was there anything else that we'd talked about?
I think Jenna had a question about how a class size in a contract would work with respect to enrolling students from outside the district.
Or inside the district.
Or even inside the district, if you were needing to flex class sizes and it's bound in contract. How does that work?
No, it's not. It's the contract that we have negotiated says that we will, use the state recommend, we will, to the extent possible, adhere to the state recommended guidelines for class size. And if circumstances arise and that's not possible, then the teachers we agree to discuss with the teachers different ways to support larger classes.
Okay.
And I have to apologize, but I am going to leave because I've got to go into my doctor's appointment.
Well, and I think
Thank you, Madeline.
and thank you. We are probably out of time on this agenda item as well. We've got some very patient people sitting in the room. But I think it would be helpful if you guys can plan to come back in May with another report. Again, understanding that this is being done in the spirit of just making sure that everything is buttoned up and ready for you guys to go.
Yeah, I think, I'm just going to be honest, the fact that you think we wouldn't hire teachers that are licensed, staff that are licensed or provisionally licensed, doesn't, some of these questions lead me to believe that you still don't have any confidence in our ability, and that everybody who's being hired, we obviously wouldn't hire them if they weren't appropriately licensed. That's a state regulation. So I'm happy to come back and do it. I'm happy to come back and talk about who's doing what jobs. But again, I don't really see why that matters to you all, because it's been going on like this for, I don't know. This school is fully functional and operational and has been, for the last 5 years we were under MAUSD and very little has changed. So again, the questions maybe seem more appropriate for a school that's never run before and we don't know how to meet the standards. But for an existing school that has the same staff, again, I'm happy to do it, but it doesn't. I don't know.
Rich, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I'm sitting here kind of confused. So we run 2 buildings. We don't have a principal for either building. They both resigned in the last month. We've been looking for behavioral people. We don't have them. I mean, I really feel like we're making these people jump through hoops. I mean, I was going to ask what color their school bus was going to be painted and what color their classrooms. I mean, are we getting down in the ticky weeds? And, you know, they're going to have to follow the laws anyways. The state's not going to let them put a superintendent in who's not licensed. I just feel like I don't understand, and there's got to be some reason, and again, being fairly new, but I'm sitting here thinking to myself, oh my gosh, if you guys were asking me this about my district, I'd probably tell you go pound sand. So, I mean, is that really our job, and don't we have more important things to do? And let them run their school. And if there's an issue, I'm sure people will complain. I'm sure we'll hear about it, and I'm sure we can do. And I think in January, having them come back is very appropriate. You know, we're running out of time today, and I really want to hear this next presentation because I think that's a very important thing. We're spending a lot of time on this, so I'd love to see us move on, which I think we're headed to.
I wonder, Jennifer, maybe the compromises, could we just get a written material that just lets us see how the staffing is aligned and the licensure, just so we make sure the superintendency is all set with their licensure, and then that the positions and the specialties that staff will be covering are either provisionally licensed or otherwise, and then maybe we don't need their presence. And the only other thing I will mention is, I'm pretty sure, and Heather can check me on this, I don't believe the AOE is doing site visits anymore because the transition is going to be to district quality standards and the quality assurance review process. And those rules are in the process of being, I think, finalized. Right. So the EQS site visits aren't happening anymore. So that wouldn't happen before January anyway.
So, and I think the difference too, Rich, to your point, is that they're standing up a supervisory district. Mm-hmm. So this is new, this is different, and I think, you know, we're just looking to make sure that everything is ready to go live, because it's not, they've moved beyond running their school to now they're also, you know, ensuring that there's transportation and special ed and the superintendent and support services. Yeah, so.
But that's something all the school districts did. I mean, we did that in our school district for 20 years. We had very little involvement with the supervisory union, and I think sometimes things may have ran better, you know, depending who the superintendent was. So I'm full speed ahead, Godspeed to them.
All right, anything else? All right, well, Jen, thank you very much for your presentation. I appreciate it. Okay, so moving on, and thank you guys for patiently waiting here. This is the DEI presentation. We've got Jody Emerson, who's the director of CVCC, who's with us today. And I'll let you introduce.
So glad you could come today and get to see the facility, so thank you for doing that. I've brought Dr. Joslin, who's in our medical professions, and you may have missed them on the tour because they were on a field trip today, and Lucinda Garthwaite, who is with the Institute for Liberatory Innovation. Dang. It's taken me a while to get it right.
Nice.
Right. And I was going to start kind of with the top level around funding and then go down to the classroom level with Dr. Joslin and then move into one of the steps that we're taking here at the center. But I'm going to let Dr. Joslin go first because we are past school hours.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity to share. I'm going to give just a little update on what the Medical Professions Advisory Board has been focused on in terms of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. We're grateful to have an amazing board made up of the regional practice manager at Clear Choice MD, the lab manager at Central Vermont Medical Center, 3 private practice physicians, an acupuncturist, a school counselor, so it's a great group of people. And one of the priorities that they've set is helping the program to be a leadership development program for future healthcare providers in terms of anti-racism, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And so They've reviewed the curriculum, and we've added topics, assignments, and activities that help teach the true history of healthcare and medicine, which is quite dark and depressing in many ways. And then identified soft skill development, and then using the Learning for Justice standards, the Justice, Action, Identity, and Diversity standards, aligning those with the curriculum, and how can we, using culturally responsive classroom, create leaders who can make the change that's needed within the industry. That's intercepted with some of what Jody's going to talk about in Perkins 5, and it's also intercepting with some of what Lucinda's going to speak about as well. And so one of the things we did recently was draft a vision statement, which I think Jody provided. It's in draft form, and our equity scholar in residence has had their look on it, and so we've been refining it. And then also continually adding assignments and topics that help broaden students' perspective. And what we're finding is that this gray area of living your values, knowing your cultural identity, and at the same time being empathetic and compassionate and inclusive is a skill set that is desperately needed for students and in order to develop leadership in the industry. So for me, it's been just like a joy to be working on these things with the advisory board and to see the students stepping into that. This year, we added a gender diversity assignment presentation for students, an implicit bias training and certificate and presentation. And then at the suggestion of our equity scholar, for next year, we're going to add a justice service learning project, getting students kind of in the community, working with industry partners. So yeah, I think that's mostly it for what we've been doing. I think there's policy level that we need to still work on as a district. And then I think the plan is to support teachers in setting goals around justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and then working with the equity scholar to kind of bring these things more into all of the programs. So I've been grateful to have support from administration as to be a little pilot program, and I'm looking forward to collaborating with more teachers. Also been very grateful to have the opportunity to work with the CTE AOE equity cohort with Tim Hammond, who's our expo teacher, so we were chosen to work on that. So we're able to collaborate with all other CTE districts and borrow shamelessly from the great practices that they're doing. Yeah, so I think we're making lots of progress, and it feels good to be having these conversations in a supportive environment. Yeah.
Every program in CTE has an advisory board of industry folks that they meet with at least twice a year, so a fall and a spring meeting. And Dr. Jocelyn's group has been really great at working with her on this.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah. Any questions for Dr. Jocelyn?
I like questions. And challenges.
The industry is participating in these conversations. Are student leadership as well part of?
That's a great question. There are students on the advisory board. Their attendance is not as consistent as the other members because many of them are in nursing school and it's very rigorous. But they are reading the materials that are being sent out. And I also will float these materials by the current students I have, so they're very open to giving feedback. And I would say their voices are a lot of what's driving this. They have, they're very passionate about making a difference. And so that's wonderful.
And you have at least one student on the student leadership team here.
Yes, one of my current students is on student leadership. Mm-hmm. Good question.
Any other questions for Dr. Jocelyn? All right.
Thank you for the
Yeah,
opportunity.
thank you so much. Thank you for staying.
You go pick up my kids now. Thank you.
The first section of the handout that I gave you, and it was also attached to an email earlier today, is our accountability data for FY22. So all CTEs get this. I did get information early this week that there are some inaccuracies on this, so as soon as I get the updated report, I will get that to you so you can see what's changed. I honestly don't know what's gonna be different on the new report. This comes from the CTE section of the Agency of Education, from data that we share with them. So every year we apply for Perkins funding. It's about, for me, it's about $250,000 a year for this center to support instructors. There are several categories. So curriculum and instruction is one category. Equity is a category of that piece. Making sure that we have the materials that we need for instruction, that we have professional development for recruiting and retaining teachers. And there's another one that I'm not remembering right now, and by the end of next week I will, because I'm going to a Perkins conference next week. Happy vacation. So we need to use this data every year when we apply to Perkins and to let them know. And so you'll see that there's some areas that are highlighted where we're not doing as well as maybe we'd like, where our center is meeting our expectations as negotiated, and yet there's still some areas where there's weakness. In the past, reading and math was from the Vermont state assessments. This FY22 data is the first year where we have the work keys data, which it's an assessment that we deliver in the fall and then again in the spring. And so it's a measure of what happens while the kids are with us, because they're coming from other schools and we don't have a lot of control over what happens there. So presumably we have some, now that we're seeing this data, some control over what happens here and how to improve student scores in reading and math while they're with us. The science one is still the state science test, whatever that's going to be. That's not with the new program, right? That's okay. So regardless, it's abysmal, and that's an area where we do need to start thinking about how do we improve those scores. So some of our goal setting this fall was around the work keys testing and how do we improve scores overall. And we used the curriculum. I would say that some of my instructors used it with fidelity and some did not, and that is coming out in our spring results very clearly. And I also think that the curriculum is not strong enough, this CAN curriculum online, to support what our students need. And so next year we are embedding our English teacher and a STEM coordinator into program for an hour a week, every single program, to try to work on those skills and use similar items to what they would see on WorkKeys. So WorkKeys has graphic literacy, workplace documents, and mathematics. And in a lot of cases, the graphic literacy of reading charts and diagrams is a real struggle. I think what we've figured out is it's not necessarily the chart or the diagram, but the way that the question is asked that students are really struggling with. And so we're hoping to really work on that piece next year to see our scores grow better than they have this year. So I just wanted to share with you, you can see that this is broken down by gender and special populations, and then by programs. So you can look through and see what our data was, and again, as soon as it's updated, I'll share that with you. And I use this to develop a plan, a 4-year plan that we share with the state and federal government through the Perkins application process in the Green Mountain grant, green writing, whatever platform. This is my 2nd year of it. We also do a comprehensive local needs assessment every 2 years. So we did one last year, which was my first year as director here, and we will do that again next year. And that helps us get a lot more data from labor market, from our teachers around our programming, and to really think through where are the areas in here that we can improve and also that we're seeing on a local level. And one of the things that we decided to do when I first came here, I trained my staff in restorative practices, because that for me is a really important key component, and I had the skill set to be able to do that. And I want to keep building on that, but it needs to do more. It's really also hard in a place where safety is key to always be restorative. And so that you'll hear more about Equity Scholar in Residence, but that's one of the tasks I've given my Equity Scholar in Residence to help us navigate how do we support students to be successful and not immediately maybe dismiss someone because of a serious safety violation, but how do we make sure that we keep our students safe? So one of the things that I decided to do as part of our 4-year plan last year was to partner with Lucinda's organization, because I'm not going to get it right again.
I say ILI, nobody gets it right.
And hire an equity scholar in residence who can come in. And the reason I did that is because I previously worked at U32, where I was an associate principal, and we had piloted the program there, and it was wonderful. The equity scholar in residence is someone who I was able to work with as an administrator, that teachers could use as a resource, that students saw as a resource. And it was an opportunity for everyone to learn from this person and for them to be the person that gets the information from all sources and can be that bridge. There's a lot of things that as an administrator I cannot share. There's confidentiality, right? And so I can say something happened, but the student on the other side might not believe that something happened because they don't see that. Unless it's something egregious, they're not going to see a response necessarily. And so the equity scholar at U32 was really helpful in bridging that gap and asking questions and being curious and providing resources that helped others understand, sometimes you might not see what was done, but have you seen a change in behavior? Have you seen this? What else do you need? And helping us to bridge those gaps. And so I wanted to have a resource like that here, who is not my direct employee. Therefore, they can come in with those outside resources and they can work with everyone here in the center. So I hand it over to you.
I'm passing this around in case anybody wants to know more, and I know your time is tight, so I'm going to try to be tight. First of all, Jody just rocks our world. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for inviting me. So very briefly, the ILI is a Vermont-based organization, but we work throughout New England. We're right now doing some work in Massachusetts, but we're Vermont-based, and I had children of color who went through the Washington Central District. So I and my partner very much experienced how very difficult it was for those kids. Not so much our son, who was an athlete, but our daughter, really rough. So we were aware personally that the traditional approaches to what is called DEI, I will tell you, I don't like DEI. I'll tell you why in a minute. Wasn't working. Traditionally, we stick in a singular leader, and it's usually a person of color in Vermont, and that almost always fails. It almost always ends up harming that person of color. And there's data on this, and that's nationally. Or we bring in top-down training, and we say, this is what you need to know. We look at you and go, just from what you look like, you need to know this and this and this. That not only has not worked, but it has had some blowback. So, and this is throughout all industries, not just education. There's really good work getting done out of Harvard, a couple of faculty of color who are doing really amazing work. So we pretty much know that training, singular leadership, policy, that inside what we call DEI has not moved the needle for our kids. The ILI was founded specifically to, we feel that we don't have time to keep doing the same thing the same way and keep having happen just inequity in our schools and kids showing up at doors looking for their children and almost maybe still losing their lives. We don't have any more time. So we want to do things differently and make it happen faster. We don't want to keep doing the same thing just because it sounds like the right thing. So that's where the Equity Scholar Residence model came from. We started looking at the research. We learned that with teachers especially, compassionate education works better. Restorative education as opposed to punitive approaches work better. There were lots of things that work better to actually move the needle for children in schools, and we combined that and made a new model. Jody very much was important to us in that we did a 2-year pilot and we got in because Jody and Stephen invited us in. It was free for them, and they allowed us to do the research. We continue to do that research there to sort of really kind of dig into the efficacy. So far, it's working. It's moving the needle. It's moving the needle in this way. The Equity Scholar works primarily with educators, only with students when the educators ask. So in other words, the Equity Scholar doesn't go in and work specifically with classrooms or with, until Jody says, hey, we got a group, or a teacher says, hey, I got something. The Equity Scholar is, and I'm really going through this all quickly, this is top, but happy to answer questions. The Equity Scholar model is pretty much 4 things. The Equity Scholar is embedded in the school. So they're there all the time, and not all the time, but they're about 25 hours a week. The other part of their full-time job is to stay on top of what's going on in the world and what's in the literature and what activists are teaching us and what's happening all over the place that teachers and administrators cannot have the time to find out. But they can. These are scholars. They know how to find information. So the other part of their time is to do that. They are responsive scholars. Of all of these things, it's the only thing we made up was responsive scholarship. Everything else is a synthesis of work that other people have done. Responsive scholarship means essentially, Jody says, we've got a particular problem with math and science with our students who meet these sort of identity markers. What's out there to help them? We have a particular problem at this school. We have a particular challenge here. So it's very school and community specific. It's very responsive.
Can I give an example?
Yeah.
One here is the non-traditional gender in program. So having female students, for example, in our heavy trades, like building trades, you took a tour, so you went through building trades, auto, and plumbing and heating, and you would have seen that the ratio is definitely off, right? And so how do we invite and make sure that the environment is safe for everyone?
And the Equity Scholars' job is to go find the most recent useful stuff, not just in scholarship, but in activists, in thinkers, in Adrienne Marie Brown. If anybody knows who Adrienne Marie Brown is, she's a brilliant young black thinker who is really informing a lot of work right now. So we lean on thinking, not just scholarship that's out there. So that's why we call it a scholar. People say, well, it's a consultant. Nope, no, it's a responsive scholar. Okay, so we start with compassion. We go to respectful, genuine relationship. We go to non-punitive. We don't do call out here. That's the young activists, especially activists of color and activists with disabilities, are saying, stop it, that's not working. And we do responsive scholarship. There, we join with, I often say to people who we work with either in organizations or schools, this does not mean that we are not fiercely anti-racist, anti-ableist. We are fiercely determined to change those things. We just don't think it's going to work to shake our fingers at people. Hasn't been changing it. We want to change it sooner. So that's really, I always tell groups this because it seems like we're a little soft, but actually we're pretty serious. We're quite serious. So the last piece I want to say is that it was in the evaluation that we did of the pilot at the end of 2 years, it was the administrators who said, this should not be a school employee. We need somebody in the school who can speak truth to power. We need somebody in the school who Jody can speak with really freely without any sort of employment policy, union issues, so those kinds of things. So the school contracts with the ILI, we provide them with the scholar that Jody had final approval on the scholar that we placed here. So we did the search, we do all the employment stuff. Jody we send in a person that she wants to work with and they go. So we're in the process of looking for funding to scale this throughout the state, but that's what we're doing here, and we're very excited to be in this school. That was really fast. So I'm happy to answer questions.
It was really good.
Where's the funding, like, how are you paying for?
I wrote it into my 4-year Perkins plan to make sure that I could pay for this. Basically, my initial Perkins plan that went in for the fall, and we get 70% of the allocation first that we can write for, and then we can add to it later. And I got a response from Ruth Durkee, who's in charge of that piece of reviewing that. Where's your equity piece? And I said, hold on, it's like I'm working on it, and that's going to be in my next round because I know I can't hire someone right away. And I told her she wanted me to get an equity literacy coordinator. And I said, I have a different idea, and I'd really like to do that, and it's coming in the next round. And thankfully, she trusted me, and I shared some of Lucinda's documents with her, and she was like, okay, you can try this. And so I did get it into my next round it was meant to be part-time for this year and full-time for next year, and we didn't find anyone until February when we found some qualified applicants. And our person has just started. He's been with us for 2 days, and already the response from both him and my staff has been amazing. They're really appreciating the perspective and the support that he's already brought in just 2 days, because he's 1 day a week for this month, and then coming in more, I think June 1st is full-time, but
Yeah,
mid-May.
June 1st, I think
Yeah,
he's
because
coming, yep.
he
Yep.
actually previously worked for the Tarrant Institute, which is closing down and winding down. So he's going to finish that project out and come to us and be full-time next year.
All of the equity scholars are masters or above. We would like to find doctoral level people because they really know how to do scholarship. Both of our current scholars are EDDs or PhDs. The way funding will work is going to be district to district. Washington Central, that board has decided to devote some of their regular budget to it. So that's how they pay for it. Other schools we're talking to, are part of the fee, if they need it, is we will help them find grant funding. As I said, we are looking for funding partners to help schools get this going. We also have just figured out that our school, what we charge to schools, even though it's a lot, it doesn't cover the cost. I donate all my time at this point for that, and that's going to go forward like that. We're going to keep discounting public school, and we're going to start selling to private schools and let them pay a little more. So that's how we're going to, part of the way we're going to scale this model. So we have other programs, but this was our first, and this is our baby. And we really wanted to launch it in Vermont for a whole bunch of reasons, one of which is Vermont's a little bit more open. Also, we have a lot of people in Vermont that say, we don't need this because there's not a lot of fill in the blank. And we do. And as soon as the equity scholar gets into the school, educators are not back on their heels. They're not getting told there's anything wrong with them. There isn't a lot of confrontation. There's a lot of this. Look, can I think with you about that a little bit? And then it goes for a little while. It's in a genuine relation. What we're seeing, though, is educator behavior is changing. And this year, we're doing some research. We started it at Washington Central. I'm hoping to pick it up next year here, where we're really starting to look at specific behavior changes quantitatively. And that's really looking good. We're asking children and their parents who identify as, I don't like this word, but that's how they identify, marginalized, to talk to us about what educators have done that makes them be able to thrive. Oh, that's really important. I forgot one important thing. And then we're pulling out those behaviors and we're counting the times that increases. So we're looking at both quantitative and qualitative. The ILI is a research institute that uses data fast to innovate and do things differently. So I come from a research background and also a higher ed background, and full disclosure, a Goddard background, so that I'm really, that's the other piece, two pieces I missed. One is we are very much about learner-centered, working with people in a learner-centered way. So it's what Jody asks us that we will bring. It's when a challenge comes up here, that's what we'll respond to. The other piece is that we have really learned with Washington Central to reframe equity. And here's what we're saying. Equity, and you notice I'm not saying D&I, because D&I get really performative. So we're not interested in performance. When we say equity, we mean all children are thriving as who they are and who they are becoming, and they are behaving in ways that allow others to do the same. And that's what happens in schools. The liberatory change is more people thriving, more people behaving in ways that other people can thrive, and more peace. That's what the ILI is about. Does that include anti-racism work? Yeah, because people can't thrive in a racist world. It's not where we start. We start there and we drill down, and that works better. So, and we just want things to work. So, is that helpful? Does anybody have any questions? Do you look like a question is like forming in your brain?
It's just so interesting to me as a model for supporting educators and systems and students and families. It's hard work, and I'm grateful that there's a lot of creative ways to think about it. Thank you for sharing.
It's really exciting. Makes me a little teary to listen to the fact that the equity scholar who's working here is named Life. And my board keeps saying, last Monday night they said, well, life goes on. And I go, yeah, you just started. That's going to be a problem. But anyway, I left a career in higher ed at Goddard as an academic dean and thought, I don't really want to do that anymore. I want to do things differently because we are moving fast enough. So that's what we're doing. So thank you all. And really, you can learn more about us if you go to the website. Certainly, I'm happy to talk with anybody if you want to call.
Very much appreciate your systems change perspective and understanding that systems are complex,
They
right?
are.
And we're always looking for points of leverage for change, right? Rather than top-down,
my language.
top-down models and things along those lines. So I find your approach intriguing because you're looking for points of leverage and moving the blob rather than linear cause and effect. So
What the research says is the biggest leverage point for children who are not getting what they need to thrive is educators. And if we can change educator behavior, we can change a lot.
And sometimes that's just giving them tools that they don't have yet.
I was going to say, instead of moving the blob, you get the blob to move itself.
That's right.
And I see you kind of.
That's what
that
systems
catalyst.
change is all about. And that's my own scholarship background is systems change and all that stuff. So, yeah. So
I appreciate the awareness part you mentioned. Sometimes the person does not know what they are doing wrong.
That's right.
Until somebody mentions it. And mentioning it doesn't mean harassing them, hey, you're doing this wrong.
That's right.
It's just there is a way to do it in a learning way so the person like, oh, I didn't know that, thank you, something like that. Yeah, it's not like a fight, it's like.
It's invite, actually.
Exactly, yeah.
And we also make a distinction, especially when I do, my own work is with organizations, and I send educators to education and support them. But we talk a lot about honest ignorance as opposed to willful ignorance. And it's really critical to discern between them as we're responding. And unfortunately, what younger activists, especially younger activists of color, are teaching me is that when we respond to honest ignorance with punishment, we drive it down, and we see a lot of what we're seeing in our communities, which is people are back on their heels, they start to feel excluded, right? And that's not going to do any good either. So absolutely, it's a really important part of everything we do at the ILI, including this program. Thank you for seeing that.
Welcome.
Just had a question. We've been doing a lot at a state level on ethnic standards, ethnic studies, and I'm just curious if you see a connection with the work of Act One, which is now, will be and is in the process of being encapsulated within our education quality standards, and the work that you're doing.
There is a connection. This is tough and a little controversial. And actually, our senior scholar, who Jody worked with to create this, who's Shelley Vermilia, thinks about this a lot more thoroughly than I do. So she could give you a much better answer. To the extent that that work borders on punitive, in its call out kind of culture, and it doesn't align with what we do. To the extent that it's working on equity for students and wanting to raise resources and create, then it's, yes, absolutely aligned with what we do. So there's some places where this is my bias. So I never know the truth of the capital T about anything much, except that these are my glasses. But I think, but my bias is that DEI, the sort of DEI industry and the way we've been working with DEI has gotten a little rigid ideologically, and I don't know enough about that work. Shelley does, and has talked with people about it, so she's in it more than I am. I don't know enough about that work. I have a concern that the kind of rigid ideological standpoint that my way, our way, or the highway is actually backfiring on us a little bit. It's creating in systems language unintended consequences, and so I have a little bit of an alertness about it. But Shelley's in it, going to the meetings and talking to people and knows people, and she's working with it. So I'm not concerned about it, and she is our senior scholar. She works with the whole district, which is a ridiculously big job, but she insists on doing it, and then she also works with that group. So we're not intricately involved because what we do is different. We don't create curriculum. We don't advise about curriculum unless Jody comes and says, hey, we're struggling with math and science scores with this particular population. You got some ideas. What are other people doing? Then we get involved. So it's really different. I don't mean to dodge. I just mean to say I'm not the expert in the ILI to talk
I would
about
say
that.
also that Shelley would often recognize maybe a pattern of behaviors in instructors or staff and would come with a curious question. But I wonder if this is happening, or have you noticed? And what do you think about that? Which would then cause reflection and kind of verbal processing around that idea. And it would reset her thinking a little bit often, but also my own and anyone else involved in that conversation, to look at it again and rethink, like, okay, if this is what we were seeing, if this is a pattern, is this what we want first? What's causing it? How might we change it to get to where we want to be?
You know, I think, thank you. I think part of the tension is that we at the ILI have figured out the top-down approaches to driving, to ensuring all students can thrive as who they are and who they are becoming. That's critical. Haven't worked that well. So I have a little bit of a suspicion for top-down approaches. However, they are also essential. So it's got to be a balance. I wouldn't, as my mom used to say, throw the baby out with the bathwater. But I think I feel that we've been a little unbalanced, but I feel like that, in Vermont anyway, that balance is there. I also want to, the other thing that surprises people about the ILI is this. Just yesterday, in one of the elementary schools in Washington Central, Shelley was working with a teacher, I think 4th grade, who said there were a bunch of kids in the class who were throwing around the word gay, and we think we might have some gay kids, and we need to do something about them. What do I need to do to intervene with those boys who are saying gay? What should I do to punish them, essentially? And Shelley said, no, we're not even going to deal with them. Now, this was a surprise to this teacher, because Shelley's gay, and Shelley didn't want to, and they were expected Shelley to go, yeah, we got to make them stop. But what she did was say, actually, what if we appeal to their better natures and bring in some kids from the junior high school who identify as gay and just talk about their lives and let them come up, and rather than call them out, let's invite them in by appealing to their relational natures. And the teacher was shocked, because they're so aligned with this kind of, we got to make it stop now. And that's my, I mean, I want to make it stop. I'm sending my 25-year-old out in a car every day, and when he's 25, and when he gets home late, I get scared. Any of you who have children of color know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, it makes me sick to my stomach. I wanted to stop yesterday. But it doesn't work to make those kids feel bad about themselves. So the equity scholar sometimes surprises teachers when they go, no, hang on. Let's go about this differently, because then we may not see the change tomorrow, but if we did it the other way, we might not see the change for 10 months. If we do it this way, we'll see it in 2. So that's better. Does that make sense? Oh.
So it seems as though it gives insight into everybody's life story, that the deeper, real learning to hear from a student from the high school on anything is probably pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And to let them see what that student's life is really powerful, I imagine.
Well, and that, that's your instinct, and I would agree with it. And again, this is a scholar, right? So she's plucking out of the air the research that says social change happens mostly in relationship. Almost all in relationship, in proximity. That I'm looking at you because you're next to me, sorry. If you and I are at odds with each other, the more proximity we can create, the less at odds we're going to be. So it feels intuitive. These are scholars, so they know the latest research, and they're bringing that right in. And Jody doesn't have to send. We never, ever. In fact, Life said to Shelley that Shelley supervises Life, and Life said, I feel like I should be doing a training, and Shelley said, no.
That's because that's what he did at Tarrant.
At all, until the educators ask a question. We don't come in with out-of-the-box training, ever. We're informed, some of you who are educators, by John Dewey, who said democracy is most strengthened when learners drive the questions. So that's the Goddard in me. And Goddard probably won't survive what it's going through now, but it'll survive in here and in here. So, it's really critical. He's not going to come in and say, we need to do this training. Jody's going to say, we're having this struggle, and he's going to say, well, there's this information, and Jody's going to say, oh, could you present that? And he's going to say yes. It's very different. Taken up enough of your time, but thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
I appreciate it a lot.
I'm sitting here thinking, like, I had no idea what I was asking for when I requested this presentation, but this was completely fascinating, and I think, at least for me, like a real paradigm shift. So, yeah, I really appreciate your time and the presentation.
I'm grateful to be here, and thanks for inviting me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for the work, all
Thank
of
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So this takes us to the last item on our agenda, which is public to be heard, and I don't know if there's anybody.
There's no one in my virtual lobby.
Okay.
Not even Suzanne, she's left.
Suzanne's done too.
All right. Well, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move we adjourn.
Nicely
All right.
done.
I will second. All those in favor, please raise your hand and
Aye.
signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. We stand in adjournment.
Thank
Thank you.